Welcome to the Scott Holm Podcast, where we are back to do that thing that if you've been a Cougar fan for any amount of time, whether that's 3 years or 43 years, you've lived it. The unfortunate, surprising, and very not fun loss, which Cougar football in its most recent iteration took on Saturday night at Rice Stadium to the Crosstown Rice Owls. We're going to be talking a fair amount about that, but we're going to regroup and also talk about a really exciting Big 12 opener game that we have been waiting literally years for, not just since the Big 12 came to be, but, the years and years of hoping and wishing that this team would once again be in a power conference. We finally officially get to see it happen on the football field this coming Saturday, as well as lots of other Cougar happenings to talk about. A very busy Big 12 and general college football slate as well. Dustin, my friend and co-host, you were the one of the three of us who actually had the privilege of being there at historic Rice Stadium for the loss. Privilege in finger quotes. How are you hanging in there, bud, after witnessing that very unfortunate football game in person a few days ago?
Oh yeah, what a privilege it was, let me tell you. And I feel like you really teamed me up with the beautiful Rice Stadium because I don't know if you are.
I said historic. I did not say
Historic.
beautiful
Sorry,
once.
my mistake.
Historic.
It's historic. I'll give it that. It's historic for sure. But spoiler alert, I'm gonna have some more thoughts on Rice Stadium later in the podcast. So to stay tuned for those. I've got two different rants coming out of this podcast as a result of Saturday's football game. So this is one I know we've gotten a little bit more blue with some of our language recently. You may have picked up on that. This is definitely one that if you listen to this podcast with your kids, you probably want to skip this one. I imagine all three of us are going to have some fun things to talk about in this one for sure.
Nope,
And,
not me.
I was
Not me.
actually thinking last week, I was like, I've been, we should try to I should try to go episode without cursing. I've been the one doing a lot of the cursing and also the attempts at editing out my own cursing. So it's like I'm doing the thing, then creating like 5 minutes more work of myself in the evening. It's like an investment in the future. But this is a bad week to try to not be blue. Bobby, how you doing, bud?
I am all right. I will be honest with you guys. I was sick all day yesterday and into today. So we are working through it and ready to talk about some Houston Cougar sports.
This is your Jordan flu game right here.
Exactly.
If Michael Jordan had to do a podcast about UNC, I guess, losing a disappointing football game.
I ate the pizza, as he said in the
Nice pull. Of course, tonight, do a little housekeeping here at the top. Please, we're proud members here of the 1012 network. So I have asked you many times before. I hope this is the week, if you have not done so, that you relent and decide to subscribe to the 1012 podcast, wherever you put podcasts in your ears. I could say I listened to the week 2 odds show while I cooked a spaghetti bolognese last Thursday. Great accompaniment. Meal turned out well, not a quinky dink. So please follow them at TN12 Network on all social media platforms and subscribe to the 1012 podcast wherever you put podcasts in your ears. And please do consider supporting our show, like a number of y'all already do at patreon.com/SHPAWDcast. We've had 2 weeks in a row now of instant react pods. Hopefully one of these days I will work it so there could actually be more than one of us on it. It was Bobby for UTSA and me at like 1:30 a.m. Pacific time for the Rice Instant React over there on the Patreon feed. So if you want my most raw thoughts,
or IO everybody a solo recap. It's one of the two. You either got to get more than one of us on, or just have me do a solo.
That's fair. So obviously, get our instant react thoughts there. Get all
the game's got to quit
content.
happening in Houston to get Dustin on the because he goes to the games. Whatever.
It's throw. I'm gonna be at next week's game too, so I'm already like having a fun time thinking about logistics and the fact that I'm gonna be trying to record a solo pod like 10 hours before my flight out of Houston. So excited about that. Patreon.com/SH podcast before I get any more distracted. Of course, support our good friends Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com, makers of incredibly comfortable vintage sports wearable, a lot of really great college collections. They launched their Houston Cougar collection this summer. Of course, I am wearing a Charlie Hustle shirt as part of their collection. Just absolutely fantastic, comfortable tees, and you can save 15% off that by using our promo code SHP15. We know a lot of y'all already have. Charlie Hustle tells us a lot of y'all have, so we really appreciate that. I know there are a lot of y'all who are going to be repeat customers with what Charlie Hustle will have coming in the coming months and years of the rest of this athletic year. I'm excited for y'all to see what we have been told is out there for some coming Cougar gear. So Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com, promo code SHP15. There's still time. Get yourself some fantastic vintage Cougar wearables. Guys, as much as I would like to do anything but this, I think we have to start this absolutely unfortunate Rice game recap with a, I guess, point A to point B, how this was played. You guys mind if I give that one the old college try? Please object. I would really hate if you guys want to change up format and me have to live every moment of this football game once again.
I was gonna say, I feel like the pause after guys at the beginning of that sentence there really told the entire story. Is sufficient.
A pregnant pause, if you will.
You don't really need to go through the entire play-by-play.
In the three sighs, the
there was like more than 3 sizes. I kind of like, I didn't type word for word what I'm gonna say, but as I kind of put all the bullet points of, okay, don't forget to say this, I was just like, Jesus, what a fucking clusterfuck. Honestly, just start this out, Blue. So we'll try to get through it without torturing you guys. If you want to talk about foreshadowing, that great term from an English class that the three of us may have taken at one point in our lives, the first 2 possessions of this game, I think, gave everyone a clear indicator this was not going to be an easy night for the Cougs. The Owl offense, in just under 5 minutes in the opening possession of the game, marched down the field, converted multiple third down in middle or long distances, got the game's first score, and a pass to Luke McCaffrey where seemingly no Cougar defender was accounting for Rice's top receiver. The Cougars' first possession ended after only 4 plays when Donovan Smith was pressured in the backfield instead of taking the sack, made the extremely poor decision to try and throw the ball away. Rice defensive back Treshawn Devons grabbed the ball as he fell out of bounds inside Cougar territory. Rice would capitalize on the Cougs' first giveaway of 2023. Freshman Dalen Alexander ran it on 4th and goal to put the Owls up 2 scores in the first quarter. And from there, believe it or not, the situation only got worse for the Cougars. The offense went 3 and out. The Owls only needed 3 plays to go up 21-0. 2 really pivotal plays on that drive. A 37-yard run by Dean Connors was, I hate to say it, a low light for poor tackling and tackling angles, and an otherwise solid night for the Cougar run D. It set the Owls up really nicely deep in Cougar territory, and the third touchdown came from a pretty incredible throw and catch by JT Daniels to McCaffrey. The Cougar offense punted it back to the Owls in the early second quarter, and other than the ending of this game, I don't think anything demoralized me more on Saturday night than the Owls' fourth and ended up being actually final touchdown drive of regulation. The Cougar defense allowed the Owls to convert on multiple third downs and 10 yards or greater, including on Daniels' touchdown pass to Braylon Walker. On this drive alone, the Owls had completions of 17 yards twice, 15 yards, 16 yards, and 23 yards just on that drive. Midway through the second quarter, and the Owls are up 28-0, and many of us, I think, are questioning our life decisions here. Finally, the Cougar offense did respond in the next possession. I think really Parker Jenkins' 22-yard run, I think, set the tone that opening play, 3rd and 5. Smith connects with Matthew Golden, who initially bobbled the ball but came down with it, gets the Cougars on the board. It was really looking like the Owls would go into the locker room up 4 scores, but Isaiah Hamilton made a really nice play on the ball on 3rd and goal, grabbed Daniels' pass to send the Cougars down to the showers, only 28-7. And I think there was no bigger missed opportunity in this game for U of H than the third quarter. You had 2 different drives where the offense ended with a turnover on downs in Rice territory. The first one ending at the Rice 8-yard line on a 4th and goal, where it looked very much like Donovan Smith missed an open Matthew Golden in the back of the end zone. And the second one ending on the Rice 33, and what looked like a pass that receiver Josh Cobbs probably should have come up with for the first down. I think some credit to the Cougar defense for getting the Owls off the field with 0 points and 1 first down in their 2 third quarter possessions. Isaiah Hamilton forced a fumble by Braylon Walker after a completed pass, gave the Cougs the ball back near midfield. This possession, the Cougars finally started looking something like an explosive offense. He had multiple long runs by Tony Mathis Jr. on 3rd and goal. Smith finds Pater on a quarterback sneak, 28-14. Cougars starting the comeback, and Rice backed themselves up super deep on a hold on a kick return. A little help from Malik Fleming as well. The Cougars actually started this possession back in Rice territory. Another missed opportunity, though, a 3rd down sack, forced a Cougar punt near midfield on 4th and very long. Cougar defense gets the ball back, but not before Rice bled 4 minutes of clock. The Cougs needed a big 39-yard reception from Matthew Golden to stay alive on 3rd down. And next play, Stacey Sneed scores from 14 yards out, and the Cougars are now only down 28-21. Owls commit another kick return penalty, and bizarrely enough, I had to double check this. They threw 3 passes and used up less than 1 minute of clock in a half where I think they were very conservative on that drive to decide, you know what? No, I think we're so confident in our pass game, and quite frankly, can't blame them though for some of what the Cougar defense did there. But Cougs get the ball back with less than a minute used up. A terrible punt also started the Cougar offense in Rice territory. Ultimately, with 15 seconds left, Donovan Smith ties the game up on a 1st and goal quarterback sneak after picking up 3rd and short on the previous play. At the time, I very much wanted U of H to kick the PAT, like Holgorsen ended up doing. Don't know if that was the right decision in hindsight, but I will certainly say I supported it in real time. OT did not look much like the second half, unfortunately, for the Cougars. The Owl offense responded to the Cougs touchdown, their first overtime possession, with a fairly easy one of their own. And then on the second overtime, the Owls would get the ball back, score easily, and eventually would get the game-winning points on a successful 2-point conversion run. The Cougars would respond with a second overtime touchdown, but the 2-point conversion pass from Smith to Golden falls incomplete. Rice's team rushes on the field to celebrate that program's first Bayou Bucket win in 13 years. Guys, where on earth do we start with this one?
I'd like to start by asking a question. That is, what does unacceptable mean? Because that was a word that got used a lot in the post game by Dana Holgorsen. I think some of the players too. Unacceptable, and like, what does that mean? Like, right? Because you keep hearing say that's unacceptable. You keep hearing Dana Holgorsen say, that's on me, whatever the case may be. I don't know where it started. There's a quote that I've always thought about and always kind of kept in the back of my mind every time I hear someone use that word, which is, if you call something unacceptable and then you don't do anything about it, you don't know what unacceptable means.
Yep.
So like, what accountability is there going to be for this game? Dana's, that's on me. That's on me. He keeps saying that, usually after doing a whole lot of suggesting that it's on his players, and it kind of throws in the, it's on me. And I mean, like, and yes, I understand, like, there's no like right answer there, because you can't really disentangle it being on the players, which is on the coaches. But like, well, what does that mean? It's on Dana. Okay, great. So what? So is he going to go back in time and realize that he needs to actually like bring in an exciting offensive mind and actually cede some offensive control to them, and maybe realize that top offensive minds, like Dana once was, don't stay top offensive minds for long without bringing in fresh blood? I mean, to be like offensive and dismissive towards an individual who knows profoundly more about football than I do, but I mean, holy shit, maybe heading into the Big 12 and replacing Shannon Dawson as quarterbacks coach with a guy who spent 8 of the past 9 seasons being either a grad assistant or an analyst under Dana Holgorsen, and having nobody named offensive coordinator. Like, I mean, like maybe that was a wildly terrible idea. I sure hope that I look like the biggest idiot on the planet when we suddenly become awesome on offense going forward. But man, these first 2 weeks and just the first half of this Rice game specifically really solidified my fears that Dana's never going to ask for help with the offense. He can only really coordinate a good offense if he's got 2 NFL players running the show and he's playing a crap schedule like we were last year. I mean, this is on a guy who on Tuesday said, "Oh yeah, Houston." He says, "Oh yeah, we just had the best Tuesday practice we've ever had."
That's what ticked me off too. Is
I was gonna say, either that means you've got a coach who's completely lost his team's attention between Wednesday and Saturday, or he completely misread where his team was on Tuesday, or he's just been blowing smoke up everyone's butts. Because the first half of football that we saw, minus a couple plays right at the end there, it's going to go down to the pantheon of bad halves of football we've seen this program put out there. So, which I guess brings me back to my original question, and then I'll pass it off to you, Bobby. What is acceptable? What unacceptable? What does it's on me? What does any of that actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, I sent out a tweet when we fell down 28-0 saying this is possibly the worst performance I've seen from a U of H team since I started watching Cougar sports in 2007. That was my freshman year at U of H. That's when I first started. And I texted Sam this, and I said, this is the worst I've ever seen us. And I kind of thought about it, and over the last couple of days, I've kind of thought what performances are worse, right? And there's like 2 I can think of off the top of my head. There's 2 that like others kind of threw out at me, because let me tell you, some Cougar fans were pretty upset that I said that. They were like, there's been worse. And I'm like, yeah, when I first sent this tweet, there hadn't been, right? But I'm still sticking by the fact that I think this quite possibly is the worst game I've seen us play since 2007. The only 2, UTSA for the TDECU opener, which, okay, I can see that one being worse. I can write that one off a little bit by going first year head coach, new quarterback. You lose some of the hype going in with the new stadium. Everyone was talking about it, super excited, but I can hear the argument for that one. And then the other one is Army, right? Army 70-14, but I can say Army was a good team that year, right? Army took OU to overtime. They went into the game top 25. Like you go down and it just becomes like this thing where everything just gets worse and worse. This was awful. It was terrible to just get pushed around by a Rice team that, for granted, we don't know how the season's going to play out. We don't, right? This Rice team could go 11-1 for all we know. They're probably not going to, though, right? Like, there just hasn't been a ton, and we just got bullied by them. They absolutely bullied us for the first half of the game. And then to top everything off, right? We're a bad throw at the end of the first half away from being down 4 scores, right? It should at least be 31, maybe 35-7 at that point, right? That throw wasn't great. He made a play. We made a play. Okay. Then you come out with the ball. You take up half the third quarter on your opening drive and walk away with 0 points. You have to get something out of that. Like, if you're going to take up half a quarter, you have to score. You cannot stall. Or you need to come out, score quick, and get your 7 or your 3 quickly. I don't disagree with going for it on 4th down. You've been getting your teeth kicked in all game. I understand you're putting up your first drive. You go for it on 4th down, but you can't take up half a quarter and then absolutely not get any points. It's unacceptable. And really, when you think about some of the plays that got us back into the game in the second half, the fumble recovery. Well, the cornerback got burned on that play. He got burned for 18. He got beat on the inside, and it was an 18-yard gain, and then he punched the ball out. He kind of got lucky. Let's be honest, right?
I think that was a good punch. I mean,
it was a good.
I
don't
have very much nice to say about this defense, but I give Isaiah Hamilton credit. Like, he made 2 good plays. Is there much else defensive to talk about? No, right. But like, give the guy credit for making the play there. At least he was beat, but at least he did something positive about it. Sorry.
Yeah, but just that, like, we find all these positive things, and like, why did we come back in that game? Like you said in the game summary, they had a 25-yard punt to put us on the 40 for that game tying drive. Like, it's not like we drove down, ran a 2-minute drill, and like, they gift wrapped it to us, and we couldn't close the deal. Rice did everything in their power in the second half to let us back into that game. I think we made a couple of nice plays, but there was nothing that just made me go, okay, this was us just coming out and dominating. Rice let us back into that game, and then we still couldn't capitalize on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already kind of talked about it, but I think just the failure to see this team prepared for this game got to be the most frustrating thing about it. Starting any game against any opponent by allowing 4 straight touchdown drives is bad, unless you're facing like a top 2 or top 3 kind of program. And that only one of those 4 touchdown drives that Rice managed was even on a short field off a turnover situation. This defense allowed 278 yards in just under a quarter of a half of football to Rice. And I don't think I'm insulting Rice football by saying that no Houston Cougar defense should ever look as helpless as this one did against any Rice team. In those 4 drives, the Rice offense scored more than they have scored in any Bayou Bucket game since 2011, just on those 4 drives, not even 2 full quarters of football. And the start wasn't any better on the offensive side either. As bad as the defense looked, the offense was very, very, very much not ready to go out of the gates in this one. An inexcusable turnover by a guy as veteran as Donovan Smith to give the Owls that early double-digit lead. And for seemingly the umpteenth time now in the 5th season of Dana Holgorsen being here, the Cougar offense comes out of the gate slow, and it just seems to be a consistent big picture problem with this team. And I promise I'll keep most of my thoughts about the game to what happened on the field, but we're certainly setting that big podcast sign of days since Dana Holgorsen said something that made the fan base mad back to 0 after this one. And my stance always is that I have no problem with Dana behind closed doors telling guys things like, hey, this is your responsibility to make this better, because fundamentally it is. Like, obviously, big picture, it's his job as a coach to do better, to put them in positions to win and do all the stuff that doesn't seem to be doing, or seems to be done as well as I think we'd all hope. But don't mind that behind closed doors. But doing it in the media publicly, I think, sucks big time. And more importantly, sweeps away his own responsibility as the CEO of this program, that had this absolutely abysmal flat start in this rivalry game. And it may come off, I guess, as arrogance to expect Cougar football to never lose to Rice. Don't care. I think of it less as arrogance and more as me being a Cougar football fan, alumnus of the university, season ticket holder that expects this fucking program to do better given the level of money that flows into it, than what we've seen under Dana Holgorsen. It's simple return on investment. And I don't think Cougar football has ever gotten worse return on investment in this program's history than what we're seeing right now. It seems pretty bad, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I want to quickly throw out 2 more candidates for worst game since 2007. Opening the post-Case Keenum era.
Yeah, that's going.
By getting our teeth kicked in by Texas State was pretty rough. And hell, last year, I know it was like only like a 14-point loss, but like giving up 70 SMU were just every single possession. At least Rice eventually stopped marching down the east on every single drive. SMU did it the entire game. That was
the only reason why I don't include that one is because our offense looked okay in it too, because it was a shootout. So that's why I don't include it. This game, everything sucked. Like,
I don't think we've ever been in a shootout more than it's just like that. I was sure we weren't going to get back in, because it's like we'd have to get 2 stops to get back in this game, and I'm like,
yeah, and we're not going to.
It looks more likely that I'll be called an Aslan to come play than it does.
Guys, legitimately at that game, I had to make a plan with my wife of like, okay, are we going to sit here and watch them score 100, or are we going to leave? Like, what does SMU have to hit before we leave? Like, that was a legitimate conversation. So I can understand that one, but I will at least go, our offense did put up 63. So
it's fantastic in less than a year that we've had these 2 games happen with one of the higher paid coaches in the country.
Yeah, with one of the, just we have this defensive coordinator that everyone says is going to be the greatest.
We're paying him 7 figures.
He's the next head coach in waiting, and And you, Dustin, you didn't have to watch this, but the NFL Network crew, really,
terrible.
You could tell, had not ever watched a U of H game over the last 2 years.
I tell you.
They were just like, this offense is a run and gun offense. I'm like, it hasn't been in.
They said air raid like 2 times.
Yeah, like, and I was like,
what
no, this is not air raid. This is the farthest thing from an air raid offense that we've ever had in my time as a fan.
Yeah, no, it's pretty rough overall. I do have one little bullet point of silver linings, so I guess now is the point where we trot those out, and here's the best I can do on that one. It's a very small percentage of my overall notes as the for this game, the ones that's silver linings. One, it's only 2 games into the season, so there's that. So lots of results. If you look at week 2 last year, you'd be surprised what some of those teams did by the end of the year. So weird stuff happens. 2, I mean, you have a bitter taste in your mouth going forward. It's, maybe you win this one, you pull it out at the last second, and you believe you're a little bit better at 2-0 than you actually are, and you have a little bit more belief and like, oh, hey, it's okay. Yeah, we didn't play great, but we can figure out ways to win. And this is a very much forces you to take a deep look inwards and figure out, what to do going forward. And I mean, also just like looking at the Vegas line coming out for TCU, not to get too ahead, but only being a 5-point, I believe it is, underdog against the Horned Frogs. It seems ridiculous, but also like Vegas always seems to know more than anyone does.
It's moved up a little bit, but your point's valid.
Okay, but like, but I mean, I remember, not to like harken back to this for forever and ever and use this one data point and just bleed it to death, but like the James Dickey plus 10 versus UConn or whatever that year, and we're like, come on, 10, like they're going to beat us by 50, and then we actually won that once. I mean, just weird stuff happens, and like, and you can, and I think maybe more than we realized last week when we were previewing this game, that there was such trap game potential for this, coming off of your season opener and having the win over UTSA and the semi-dramatic win there, and opening the season with a win, and then knowing that you have TCU in your first ever Big 12 game a week after that. So I mean, like, does it suck? It sucks to hear a coaching staff be like, yeah, I don't know, we just couldn't get our guys motivated to play our biggest, our crosstown rival or whatever. They were more motivated than us. Like, that sucks, but also like look ahead stuff is the natural thing that happens in athletics broadly, college athletics specifically. So it is hard. I mean, I'm the one that fucking tweeted, hey, Chris Pepman, fire everybody after the game. So I'm not trying to like walk and back and be like, well, but I mean, what's it's never as bad as it looks. It's never as good as it looks. So I mean, I'd still it's disappointed and angry and all the justifiable emotions that we all are. I feel like I wouldn't be horribly surprised if this team still ends up looking a little bit better at points than it did last week. Still maybe has a result or 2 along the way that we enjoy watching, even if last Saturday was pretty damn difficult to watch.
I just, my biggest, I know we're supposed to do silver linings, but to like what you said, I think the thing that is probably most frustrating for me with Dana saying, the team wasn't prepared, and it is early and you are disappointed that you couldn't get them more excited for this game with your crosstown rival, all that kind of stuff. Was he said it was the best Tuesday practice they've had. And then after the game, he goes, maybe we practiced them too hard on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. We don't know what. Maybe Wednesday, I could see it on Wednesday and Thursday. Then what the fuck did you see on Tuesday, Dana? What did you see on Tuesday? And what flipped in the 12 hours from your last practice to your next practice on Wednesday? What happened there? And the fact that he's in year 5 and he still doesn't know that, oh, hey, this motivated my team and this didn't motivate my team. Like, how are you in year 5 and you still don't know what your team, what looks like a good practice, what looks like a bad practice? And how do you on Wednesday and Thursday, when you go, oh, I could see we had some trouble on Wednesday and Thursday, not fix that? Like, that's your whole job. Like, that's what you get paid to do, is when you see them not coming out and practicing on Wednesday and Thursday like they should, it's on you to get them ready for Saturday, no matter what game is coming up, no matter all of that. You get paid millions of dollars to make sure that Tuesday practice that was the best of all time is great on Wednesday and is great on Thursday.
I mean, I think you can find some positives in what the offense did. Not an exclusively positive performance. I mean, you had 3/4 of essentially doing way less than you should have. But I thought the run game did more against Rice than maybe I expected after just a pretty awful rushing performance against UTSA. Seeing what the Owls defensive front did in week 1 against, I think, what looks like a quite good, and it does not give me any pleasure to say that Longhorn team. And in the fourth quarter, you finally saw, I think, that rushing attack show an ability to pick up critical, tough yards on like 3rd and short situations, something we basically saw none of in week 1. I still think Donovan Smith is a plus in the running game. And I think maybe the best endorsement I can give is that maybe in hindsight later on this one, I wish we'd run the ball in some situations where we didn't. And I thought we saw good things second game in a row from Samuel Brown. I thought Matthew Golden had a couple nice touchdown catches, but I would agree with Dana when he said that Matthew Golden should get himself more involved in the offense. But I think Samuel Brown's first 2 weeks have been, I think, a really strong positive. It hasn't been exactly the best passing game. The guy is still putting up good numbers. He's still showing an ability to take the top off a defense that I don't know we've seen our other receivers do as consistently as Brown is. So that's the positive there. But that's positives about an offense where you only had 1 score in your first 6 real possessions. I think there's not really a whole lot I think to be positive about here, other than, I think the guys definitely didn't quit there. But I mean, God, getting 134 yards on 2 third-quarter drives and get 0 points to show for it. I am Mr. Hates kicking field goals. It's malpractice to have not kicked a field goal. Maybe I could see it on the 4th and short, like at, I think, the 33. That's not really comfortably in Jack Martin's range. Like, I think that's like you're in that no man's land where you have to go for it. But the 4th and long on 4th and goal on that first possession where we used up almost half of the second or half of the third quarter to get no points there, just inexcusable. And again, I know this is a situation where touchdowns are winning the game, but I mean, at that point you still had a quarter and a half, and yeah, again, you're still down 3 scores, but I don't know. I don't know why with the offense looking like it did that you didn't elect to take points and not a short down and distance situation to go. I think the game management still feels very inconsistent, feels like sometimes we're very aggressive, feels like sometimes we're very conservative. I think I said this in the Instant React show. It's a very layman's thing to say about something as complicated and something that I know so much less about than the staff, offensive play calling, but there are so many we did that there kind of play calls. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we showing any sense of urgency?
On the 2-point conversion. And
I don't understand that.
When we've been running the ball, when we've been like the last quarter and overtime period, when we've been running the ball as well as we've have in ages in short yardage to go. No, we're going to throw a super high degree of difficulty fade to Matthew Golden in that situation. I love Matthew Golden. I think Matthew Golden's a great receiver, but I don't know why you're not considering some kind of run in that situation, the way you've been getting 1, 2, and 3 yards consistently against Rice in the run game. There's just,
and it's not like we hadn't done, the week before and in this game, just quarterback power, QB power. Yeah. That was just running all over the place.
Yeah. Just, it doesn't make any sense. And I know there's a big gulf of knowledge between what I know and what our staff knows about football, but it's hard to square that circle. I want to defend the staff. I want to see like, okay, this is what those guys are seeing in the situation. This is why they're doing it. And it is just really hard to understand the logic there. And you notice, by the way, I did not have any defensive positives because other than Isaiah Hamilton's, I think, 2 nice plays, I don't think there were any. I think it is an indictment of Rice, even in this win, that they didn't drop 40 plus in this defense. The way JT Daniels was slinging the ball around, the way they let themselves get too conservative. That's why Mike Bloomgren's a dog shit coach. That's why it's so goddamn humiliating, guys, to see this program lose to this fucking Yutz. The worst Rice coach of my lifetime. And Rice has had some.
He's awful. Not
super successful coach, and he coached circles around Dana Holgerson. Point blank.
Absolutely.
Point blank.
Absolutely. He tried to give us the game, and Dana couldn't take it. He tried to give us the game. Like you said, their last drive, they threw the ball 3 times. I mean, if they run the ball there, you probably don't have enough time. Or if they get a good punt out.
Like they hadn't been running it successfully, but they would have at least burned more clock.
Yeah. It was almost malpractice by their coach, and yet he came away with the win. Like you said, he coached circles around Dana.
Yeah, it's not a great sign that, like I said, I think you mentioned, Sam, we've got like a head coach who's in the like top 25 or 30 in the country of salary. We've got a salary pool for assistants that's reportedly in the top 30 or so, like in the country.
As good as it's ever been.
And we've got no named offensive coordinator, and we have an offense that through 7 quarters scored 24 points despite being given the ball in plus territory like a bunch of times.
I have a stat for that real quick.
It's not great.
6 possessions start in opponent's territory this year that didn't have a single point as a result of them. Not great.
That's grim.
It's incredible. Like,
yeah, what happens?
It's almost harder to do that than score.
I was gonna say, what happens if I more disciplined teams that aren't giving us the ball in plus territory a bunch of times?
If I was using ask coach on NCAA football 13, I'm pretty sure that I could just choose a random playbook, use ask coach, and get points out of it on NCAA 13 if I did that with real life players. I'm pretty sure I could have a more imaginative offense than what we have right now.
I will say, I meant to throw one other thing. I was going to throw my silver lining, which is just like from the player perspective that like they went down 28-0. And I said, I was like, hey, like you're getting your ass kicked by your local rival and their fans are chanting the F word at you. Like, have some pride. And like they did, I thought they showed some pride. Like it sucks that they started as bad as they did. Like that sucks for everybody, the players, the coaches on down. Like I will say they didn't give up on the game. They had some pride. They tried to get back in it. So like, I'll give them that, but it's still, it's only partial credit because at the end of the day, don't go down 28-0 to fucking Rice.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I've never been embarrassed to rock U of H gear until Sunday last week when I was like, or this past Sunday when I was like, maybe I don't rock the U of H socks anymore.
All right, so before we get to forward, are we done with the game? But before forward reviews, because I've got one other rant that I want to squeeze in here before we completely...
Go ahead, buddy.
I was gonna say I was gonna jump in real quick. I promise I won't have another couple of minutes. Saturday for me personally in my life, A++ day. Went to a concert I've been looking forward to most of the year. Got our seats upgraded because they wanted the lower bowl to be fuller. That's the first time in life I've gotten my seats upgraded. And the concert was everything we wanted it to be. My significant other was there. We had a great time. And the only thing that didn't go right about this day was my stupid alma mater's football team losing to Rice. It's just like, gotta do this. This could have been an A+.
That's why you don't put your faith in Cougar sports, buddy.
Truly don't. Dustin, the floor is yours.
All right, here we go. So I just have one last point, and I wanted to bury it at the end because, like, yes, it's going to come off as at least somewhat bitter, and I am at least somewhat bitter, so I'm not even denying that. But like, I don't want it to be the focus of what we're talking about here. But like, I thought it was worth mentioning. That was going to the game. Like I couldn't hear as much for the second half, but literally at least 6 or 7 times during the first half, their entire Rice student section starts chanting "fuck UH." Like literally didn't hear anything from them the entire game other than just repeatedly "fuck UH." I don't know if you heard, like, went and listened to the Rice announcer at the end of the game. First words out of his mouth when the game was over: "They'll be crying on Cullen Boulevard tonight. Whose house? Owl's house." And like, it just seems so like, fucking why? And like, yes, I hear you saying Ruck Feist. I hear it. And like, to be clear, that sucks too. And like, I say that knowing that I'm going to piss off some of our listeners who do the Ruck Feist thing, but like, it's dumb. And like, but just, I don't know, if we host Rice next year, and literally the only noise you hear from the student section or in student section the entire game is just ruck Feist or fuck Rice, whatever, that'd be embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed by that shit. If we've ever beaten Rice in any of the 8 consecutive times we've beaten them, and our announcer has ended the game with "they'll be sobbing on South Main tonight, Cougs fight never die," or fucking whatever, like that would be petty and embarrassing. And like we would deserve better from our fan bases and our announcers if they're doing that shit. And like I remember 2018 after the or 17 game after Harvey, we're just like they had the beautiful moment with the bands together and talking about Houston, and like I thought it was great. And I thought that was really a turning point, because I've always felt that that's the way that this rivalry should be, is like we're both city of Houston, we're both schools that have traditionally been shit on by the bigger schools, the bigger, more moneyed schools. Like, yeah, that doesn't mean you don't want to beat the shit out of each other. You absolutely do. Like, I've got 2 brothers. I've loved them both very much. I've done lots of competitive things against them. You think I don't want to beat their asses more than I even want to beat if I'm just playing a game against some random stranger? Of course I do, but I'm not yelling "fuck you" at them like while I'm doing it. I'm not like rubbing it in their face when the game is over. I'm just like, hey, cool, I won. I'm glad to have won and beaten my smart, talented brothers at something. And it's just like the whole game, the fucking mob, okay, like, and I'm not gonna ever be like, oh, the mob used to be this great thing, it used to always be funny, because that's not true. It's been a hit or miss. It's always been some tiny little unit. But the halftime show was just so like, I don't even know what they were going. They're just like, oh, the Big 12. And they're like, let's just try to find a like edgelord thing to say about every Big 12 school. LOL.
Not the mob.
I know. They're at the end, like, oh, were you
the
offended?
mob went edgelord? No
I know,
way.
like at the end, they're like, were you offended? Email us. Like, I was offended at ricemob.com or whatever the fuck. And it's just like, again, like, I'm not saying they were ever amazing, and that's not ever kind of what they've always been, but I couldn't stop thinking of one of my favorite headlines from The Onion when they're like, Marilyn Manson is now door to door trying to shock Americans. Like, that's just what it felt like. Just like, okay, you guys aren't remotely relevant anymore, and you're just like, what can I say? Did this get out? Like, just the whole thing was so fucking stupid. And just like, and again, like, if this is not going to be like a, hey, we're all city of Houston, whatever, sibling rivalry, we want to beat the shit out of each other, but generally support each other otherwise. If it's going to be a fuck you rivalry, then like, why are we offering these fuckers home and homes? Like, they bring 5 fans across town to scary Third Ward. Like, if we'd play them at home this year, I'm 100% confident that the traveling contingent they'd have brought would have been the lowest of any team we're hosting this year by fucking far. Like, maybe Sam Houston, even Sam Houston.
Sam Houston would bring like 10 times as many fans because they have so many like local, little ums. Yeah.
Right. And then you got, so that's what you get. You get nothing when you host them. And then when you go on the road, you have to play in an absolute shithole. And let's make no mistake, Rice Stadium is a shithole. It's historic. It has some beautiful views. If you're up top, you can see a lot of Houston and see the game at the same time, but it's still a shithole. First, our seats for the first half were going to be bathed in the just like baking ass sun. So me and my buddy went and sat on the shadowy side up in the top section just so you can see the field better for the first half. Went to go to the bathroom at halftime. The door to the bathroom had a fucking ladder over it that I had to duck under to get into the bathroom, to then go stand on a little lip and pee against the wall into a trough with a bunch of other dudes.
They still have the troughs? I thought they'd gotten rid of the troughs.
No, downstairs they've gotten rid of the trough. That's what I thought. You just think over time, you're like, surely Rice has updated their stadium even a little bit, enough to like get rid of the.
They have an end zone facility, guys.
Like, no, they fucking still have the piss troughs, and you had to duck under a goddamn ladder to even get there. It's ridiculous. Like, when another school doesn't travel worth shit to help your bottom line, and they have a shitty stadium to play return games, then you don't give them home and homes. You either maybe buy a game or you don't fucking schedule them. Houston giving Rice home and homes in football is charity. It's charity, and you don't do charity for someone that's repeating yelling "fuck you" at you. So at this point, I don't know. I would rather travel to UTSA or UNT for road games, play games in their stadiums, which are actually nice and have any business hosting high-level college football games. Gives your alumni bases in those cities a chance to see a game more locally. A lot of Houston fans will still travel for those games. Like, why are we playing these fuckers if they like can't get rid of Mike Bloomgren after 5 years of going 3 wins a year or whatever the fuck? They don't have a stadium that they will spend any money on to bring it into the 21st century, and they're unwilling to bring fans in any kind of numbers to come see it. Why fucking schedule these guys? Is that a little bit bitter because we lost? Probably, but I feel like I stand by all of my my points I've made here. Anyway, end rants. And to be fair, win or lose, like that rant was in my mind, win or lose before this game was over. So there's not entirely just us losing making me cranky, although that's certainly part of it.
I would just say Saturday night, I think, was it for me in believing Dana will be a successful head coach here. I mean, this is the kind of humiliating loss this university should not abide by from its football program. Just like you mentioned earlier, Bobby, Major getting 70 dropped on him by Army to cap off what was a very disappointing 2018 season. Just like Tony Levine losing at home to UTSA and Tulane in his final season here. And I think if anything, it's worse because this program has so many more resources now than it did even 5 and 9 years ago under those previous coaches that got dismissed. So U of H is investing more money than ever in its football program. That's U of H institutionally or U of H donors, probably more the latter than the former, but both. For 2 years in a row now, you've had embarrassing head-to-head results against Rice. Last year, just barely by the skin of your teeth winning that game at TDCU. And this year, need to come back from a 28-point deficit to send it to overtime and ultimately lose this game. There's no reason for it. UH football isn't resourced at a level where it should be expected to compete at the top of the Big 12 right now. I think I have my expectations realistic, but I don't think it's unreasonable to ask U of H football not to lose to Rice. And I think nearly everyone out there like me in this fan base who is in that area of being kind of on the fence about this coach or want to give him a chance to see what he can do this season. I don't think we should tarmac him. I think we should see what the rest of the season does, but I don't think there's any realistic chance that this head coach is going to do anything that makes me think they should be with this program long-term. Saturday was just really it for me.
Yeah. I mean, outside of winning 6 games in conference and doing something stupid in the Big 12 that none of us expect. I like you said, I don't think you tarmac them, but I definitely think there are some discussions that need to be had at the end of the season.
Maybe this team wins 7 games, but guys, that would require 5 Big 12 wins. Does that team you watch Saturday, do you think that team has 5 Big 12 wins in them?
I honestly don't think that team they might have one versus West Virginia. They might.
Damn. I think they'll do more than 1 Big 12 win. I think they'll get a couple, but 5 seems.
What did you see on Saturday that makes you go?
Teams get better. Teams get better.
It's been
I'm not saying it seems to be great, but
less what I saw on Saturday, more what I've seen from some other Big 12 teams.
That's fair. That's fair.
Far this year. West Virginia not looking that impressive. Texas Tech is 0-2, not looking that impressive. Baylor's looks like ass. Oklahoma State is 2-0, but have not looked very impressive. Like there's a lot of beatable teams on the schedule. You know, whether or not U of H becomes good enough to beat anybody, you know, we'll see.
Let's bury this game, fellas.
Forward reviews.
Woo!
All right, I'll go ahead and jump into it. Friend of the pod, Brian asks, "Is this rock bottom?" I guess remains to be determined. Brian, the Rev CHS had Dana Holgerson wildly inconsistent. By the way, there was we got probably half of the forward reviews, which we got over 100 of for the second week in a row, which is very exciting. Probably half of them were just some version of fire Dana, and I don't necessarily disagree with y'all, but I'm not going to read those because
gotta be more creative.
Get it? Chris had we're a soccer school. Joe correctly pointed out Cougars were not ready. And then one of my favorite ones, Maddie said, one word fits, unacceptable. Cleverly using both one word and forward is in his forward review there.
Yeah, that was actually my favorite from the forward reviews we got. Our good friend Sean asked, can't get worse, right? Don't know, Sean. We have 10 weeks to find out. Cougar RN had Dana prefers losing ugly, a good follow-up to his forward review for week 1, which Dana prefers winning ugly. Steven had our school deserves more. Corey had bigger conference, bigger disappointments. William had quit throwing the fade. I think we established earlier, William, we very much agree on that one. Dana ruined date night from Stevie. And look, Stevie, I'm sad about your date night, but all 3 of us have had U of H sporting events that went badly with our significant others, and we're still all together with them somehow. So write a passage here, bud. And one more, Travis had, I think, simple and summed it up. Same story, same excuse.
Yeah, and I had a couple written down, but you guys have taken all of them except for one, and it's from Majestic Drive, and it's Tillman's friends still employed.
I'll throw a couple more in on the end. Amir had this Dana's 5th year. Amir, appreciate you sticking to 4 words. I know it was tough for you. Scotty said, don't lose to Rice. Victor said could have Tech's record. So yeah, and to be fair, we are not at all far away from having Tech's record. Our friend Ryan had release basketball schedule, please. And then finally, another Brian used one of my favorite GIFs, the Taylor Twellman GIF. What are we doing? What are we doing?
I just have a couple more. Seemingly, some of you have found some optimism here. Coug 57 had good seats still available. And Mark had 2030 is our year. Just 7 years away, guys. We can make it.
There you go. All right, let's before we leave week 2 of college football, let's talk about the Big 12 week that was. I'll go ahead and jump into my 4 teams here real quickly. Kansas started things out on Friday, beating Illinois 34-23, a game that was much less close than the score would indicate. Jayhawks led 34-7 before the Illini got a couple of late TDs. And the big headline is Jalen Daniels is back. After the star quarterback missed week 1 with back tightness, he started in this one for the Jayhawks. He was electric, just made some ridiculous plays in terms of just like scrambling and throwing downfield, scrambling and throwing across his body. Looked really, really good, really impressive win. I don't know how good Illinois is going to end up being, but the Jayhawks were really, really dominant. And I feel very good about my my preseason preview of the Jayhawks and saying that I felt like they were going to outperform their Big 12 preseason pick.
Real quick, I was gonna say it's wild that Kansas Illinois was genuinely a very good and entertaining football game this weekend. Like you wouldn't think that based on those names and all the years, but very fun game. Jaden Daniels, everything you said was fantastic. Sorry.
No, you're good. You were getting to delay that I had to talk about Iowa State losing to Iowa 2013. And I will say for a while it looked like this one wasn't going to be even remotely close. Iowa State struggled mightily to move the ball behind freshman quarterback Rocco Brecht, who was both very shaky looking and also hurt by some drops from his receivers. Iowa got 10 points on their first 2 possessions and then had a pick 6 soon after to make it 17-0. It was 20-3 Hawkeyes going into the fourth quarter. But the Cyclones got a field goal early in the fourth quarter, then got a defensive stop, followed it up with an honest-to-goodness 80-yard touchdown scoring drive with Brecht finding Jaden Higgins, who had a really strong game, for the touchdown to pull within 7. And then Iowa State got a defensive stop, got the ball back on their own 31-yard line with 1:48 left to play and a chance to tie the game if they could go down and put together another touchdown drive, but didn't get even a single first down before turning it over on downs to end this one with the 2013 final. And just kind of, I hate to say it's about what I expected. I think Iowa State breaking in a freshman quarterback with, everything going on was unlikely to be able to score enough points. When you only really got one offensive touchdown and the other team got one defensive touchdown, it's when your offense scores the same number of touchdowns for them as it does for you, it's hard to win that way. And it's kind of amazing they were even able to keep that one as close as they did there. Cincinnati, maybe one of the games of the week for the Big 12, won at Pittsburgh 27-21. Bearcats continue to look like one of the stronger teams in the Big 12. I wrote in the American in my notes. I'm laughing at myself. That's embarrassing. They blew out a really strong FCS team in their opener, and then got here a road win at a borderline top 25 Pitt team to improve to 2-0. And not only did they win, but they did by winning it in the trenches on both sides. They got 5 sacks on defense. They held Pitt to under 100 rushing yards while rushing for 216 themselves. The only thing you can really nitpick, quarterback Emory Jones for Cincinnati, only 125 yards on 26 pass attempts, which is pretty anemic, but the Bearcats didn't need him to throw for a bunch of yards. They needed him to manage a game that they were dominating in the trenches and be part of the run game, and he did that. The 4 teams that are mine, I think they are the team that I'm most surprised by through 2 weeks. I did not expect them to look as good as they have. They look like they're going to be, I think, arguably a top half of the Big 12 team in year 1. And then finally, late on Saturday evening, Oklahoma State. I'll admit I didn't watch the first time because I was busy coming home and then just being mad and not at the very concept of college football. But Oklahoma State did win at Arizona State 27-15. Cowboys announced before the game they were going to use all 3 quarterbacks once again who saw action against Central Arkansas in the opener: Alan Bowman, Garrett Rangel, and the immortal Gunnar Gundy. And I'm still not real confident that 3 QB system is going to work because I'm not real confident that any of those 3 guys are going to really take the reins and be the guy, partly because none of them looked all that great in this one, but the Cowboys were able to do enough defensively to still make it a 2-score win. They actually trailed 15-7 early in the second quarter, but pitched a shutout the rest of the way and scored enough to make it work. Gundy passed for the TD that got Oklahoma State within a point, and then Rangel led a drive for a chip shot field goal to take the lead midway through the fourth quarter after Arizona State turned it over on downs in their own territory. Rangel was able to capitalize, punched in with the TD pass to seal the deal at 27-15. So Oklahoma State, a shaky 2-0, I think, but 2-0 nonetheless. That's my 4 teams. You guys got any questions, comments, or are you ready to keep this one moving here?
Just real quick, the Iowa offensive coordinator is still below his 25, so he is on track to get fired so far, and apparently defensive touchdowns count. So
I was going to say, Dustin, also, I'm sorry this is at Iowa State's expense, but the Iowa State under continues to be like the easiest money.
Any of the other games I talked about besides
I agree with you. I think Cincinnati is a very interesting team. I'm not
Yep.
sure I'm totally bought in on them yet, but I mean, through 2 games, they absolutely smashed an FCS team that was good enough to make Kentucky sweat and beat Pitt at Pitt, which I would say for where they are year one under this head coach with, I think, so many new faces. No, I mean, I think through 2 games, I think you could only be optimistic about that if you're a Bearcat fan. I was going to jump in with my 4 if y'all didn't have anything else about Iowa,
Have at
Iowa
it,
State,
bud.
or any of the other games that Dustin talked about. All right. So I'll start with K-State. I thought K-State looked good in a 42-13 win against Troy, their first FBS matchup of 2023. Maybe a little slow out of the gates, but I don't think there's much you can criticize from this one. The Cats offense was efficient. Treshawn Ward and DJ Giddens combined for 110 rush yards. Will Howard also ran for multiple TDs. And I think importantly, a K-State defense with some holes to fill, some question marks from departing players from last season, only allowed 10 non-garbage time points. I think most of the tests the Cats will get this year are going to be tougher than Troy, but you didn't see anything from them in this first test to indicate that K-State isn't a team that can be around the top of the Big 12 standings when it's all said and done. Just wanted to also point out the fantastic name on Troy's backup quarterback, Goose Crowder. That would be all for that one, unless you guys had anything to add about K-State Troy.
I'm not really a Goose Crowder, more of a Goose Space giver myself, but let's move on.
I think the most notable of the 4 games that I had my slate teams this weekend was Texas Tech hosting Oregon. Another painful finish for the Red Raiders, unfortunately for them. I thought they did a good job keeping this one competitive against what looks like a top 15 pretty good Oregon team, but I think that will be little solace to Red Raider fans during this 0-2 start after a very hyped offseason. I think if you want to look at one thing that swung this game, it was those 4 Red Raider turnovers versus the 0 from the visiting Ducks. All 4 coming from quarterback Tyler Shuck. I think some context there is that the third and final interception was one of those Hail Mary heaves at the very end with time expiring. But I mean, before that, Shuck threw a pick 6 near midfield to give the Ducks their final touchdown of the night. A weird situation where if Oregon had slid there, I think they actually could have kneeled out the clock, but ran it in and gave the Red Raiders one last chance, still 1 possession down. I think extra painful, though, to lose a game where you had a 2-score lead like they did going to the fourth quarter, up 27-19, even considering this opponent. And I'm usually a fan of going for it on 4th down, but Texas Tech going for it in their own 33 right after Oregon just had a long touchdown drive and they were still holding on to the lead. I don't know about that one, man. I think I'd get it closer to midfield before just risking sending my probably tired and demoralized defense out there to defend a super short field and ultimately give up the lead like they did on the subsequent drive. I mean, it still sounds like head coach Joey McGuire is all in on Tyler Shuck being the starting quarterback. I'm not selling all my Texas Tech stock just yet, but I don't know. I think there's a lot to not love if you're a Red Raider fan from the first 2 weeks. So I think they did challenge themselves more than just about everyone that we're going to talk about in this league. But I think if any fan base deserves an easy FCS win, I think it's this one. And thankfully they'll get that for them this week against Charleston State. Not much to say about BYU and Southern Utah. The Thunderbirds made a game of it for just under 2 quarters. Ultimately, BYU won this one by the margin you would want to win over an in-state FCS opponent. And the same story for West Virginia in their win over Duquesne. It was close for a bit. Duquesne even led for about 10 minutes of the first quarter, but ultimately not very close. I think you didn't really learn anything good or bad about West Virginia or BYU. So that's my 4 schools, unless you guys want to dig more into the Southern Utah Thunderbirds or Duquesne Dukes.
I do believe they are the Dukes. Yep.
Bobby, you're up.
All right, so we'll start with TCU. They took on Nichols and dominated just like you would expect them to. Quarterback Chandler Morris threw for 2 touchdowns, ran for 1. He had a nice 33-yard touchdown run. So yeah, not much to say on that game unless you guys have any other questions about TCU Nichols. Perfect. Next up, we'll do UCF. UCF wins on a last-second field goal to beat Boise in Boise. I know I said I felt 3.5 was going to kind of be low for UCF on this game, but they ended up not covering and needed that last second field goal to win. They had a nice drive. UCF had a nice drive to set up the field goal. But anytime you can go to Boise and win on the Smurf turf, it's always a good dub. So UCF got to be pretty happy about that. Plumlee's still out here throwing 2 interceptions. So he's going to really kind of need to clean that up.
And he's hurt, right?
Yeah.
At the start, he was out a few weeks.
Yeah. And I think he's out like 4 weeks. But he's really throwing a lot of, interceptions in the red zone. So hopefully that's something they can clean up. I mean, both of his interceptions this past week were inside the 20. One was from the 15, one was from the 13. And anytime you give up, those are prime scoring opportunities. And that's the difference between a 2-point last second win and a 14-point comfortable win with those interceptions in the red zone. So that's going to be something to kind of watch going forward, is him being out. But then can UCF hold on to the football? They're kind of struggling with their turnovers, especially in the red zone. So maybe hopefully that gets cleaned up for them with him being out. But when he does come back, just something to kind of watch and be aware of for the rest of the season. Any questions, UCF Boise? Any comments? Anything? No? All right. Finally, the game I said was going to be closer than everyone expected. Baylor, Utah. Very close game throughout the entire game. I said the Utah quarterbacks weren't good at being a quarterback, and they proved me correct. In the first half, their quarterback went 3 of 8 for 32 yards. And I do believe that the 7-point spread that they won by was pretty deceitful. I think this game was a lot closer than that 7 indicated. If you're Baylor, you are concerned that they ran for so many yards on you. I think they ran for 242. That's a shit ton of yards to give up on the ground. And yeah, I think if you're Baylor, you're kind of concerned about that. But you did play a decent Utah team, pretty close to top 25, top 15 Utah team. You played them to 7 points, and the final play of the game was obviously pass interference, and the fact that it didn't get called is kind of criminal. He was all over him. So Baylor gets the ball with 19 seconds left, goes down. Somehow there's a blown coverage. And funny thing, we were setting up for a wedding shower that was taking place at my house. And the girls are setting it all up and everything. And I'm kind of watching the games, getting ready for it and doing whatever they need me to. And I have the game on. And there's this play where the Baylor player, breaks Utah's coverage. He's all alone. And I scream, "Oh my God." And everyone freaks out because they thought somebody got hurt or something bad had happened. And my wife comes around the corner and she goes, "It's the game." And I was like, "This is insane." All right.
So, you didn't even see what happened. You didn't even know if my reaction was warranted.
Yeah, they blew the coverage. Imagine if I was a Utah fan right now. And so then the next play, there's about 9 seconds left. They throw a pass into the end zone, and the Utah player just is draped all over the Baylor guy. Doesn't get called for PI. Should have obviously been called PI. If that was a U of H play and the Utah guy was draped over you, we would still be talking about it right now in this podcast. It was that bad. So yeah, any thoughts or feelings about Utah Baylor?
That last play looked totally clean to me. So
yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did.
Yeah, I'd be in full Jeff Trailer mode if this was if that had happened to us.
So you'd have polos with the triangle on it.
I'd talk about my toughness, but I'd talk about my toughness, but then talk about one call in a game full of many plays, which every football coach on their son tells you not to do. So we're running a little long, fellas. So I figured, much as we love talking about college football generally, we would jump into the TCU Horned Frogs. Obviously, we have a big game this coming Saturday to talk about. We generally try to bring on somebody who knows the opponent a bit better than us. So in this case, our new friend, Anthony North, who writes about TCU, is one half of our new 10-12 sister podcast, the Frogs Up podcast. So let's hear what Anthony had to say about our week 3 opponent.
All right. We're very excited to be joined on the Scott and Holman podcast by Anthony North. Anthony is the managing editor for Frogs of War, co-host of the Frogs Up podcast, as Sam mentioned, one of our sister podcasts on the 10-12 network. So very excited to have him on for the first, I'm sure not the last time. Anthony, thanks so much for taking some time out to join us this evening.
Hey guys, thanks for having me tonight. Excited to talk about this TCU and Houston game, and looking forward to getting into the Big 12 schedule here. It's exciting times as we hit into kind of this meat of the schedule here going forward.
Absolutely. So I, as a U of H fan, and we're going through our transition from a smaller conference to the Big 12, what were some of the challenges TCU went through during their transition to the Big 12? And what do you expect UH and the rest of the newcomers to face?
Yeah, definitely for TCU, it was about building that depth, where early in the season, it felt like TCU was able to kind of tread water early in the Big 12 schedule, but as just attrition caught up with TCU it through those games where you don't have the level of talent deep down the depth chart to keep up. Obviously, TCU leading into its time in the Big 12 had very successful teams, successful seasons in the Mountain West, Rose Bowl, BCS games, all of that. But getting up into the power conference where every week is certainly a battle, it's a grind. And once you start getting those next levels on the depth chart, things thin out really fast. I mean, I think TCU, maybe it was Trevon Boykin's first season where he was having to play wide receiver and running back and quarterback because the depth just fell off so fast. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge coming into the conference. There's just no way to have built up the level of depth to be able to survive those key injuries. And even, power conference teams are already thin enough to sustain those types of injuries. But when you don't have those years of recruiting classes at that level, it will be difficult as injuries begin to pile up through the season.
And then both Houston and TCU are coming off of replacing, some pretty prolific quarterbacks. What have the first couple of weeks of life without Max Duggan showed you about Chandler Morris?
Well, Chandler Morris, even though he's been in college for a few years, he hasn't had a lot of starts under his belt. Not a lot of plays as, the guy. He did win the camp battle going into last season, but got injured in that first game last year, and Max Duggan took over for the rest of the season. So only a few starts under his belt, and you see that inexperience certainly in that first week against Colorado, where 2 interceptions in the red zone. It's the kind of thing that Max Duggan would have done in years past prior to his final season at TCU. And it just comes with experience. So, for Chandler Morris, I think he's going to get there. But certainly he's working through some of those early stage kind of the learning curve that it takes to get up to speed to where a fully cooked Max Duggan was at the end of his time, that he gets to the Heisman Trophy stage as Heisman Trophy runner-up. Chandler Morris certainly isn't to that point yet. And so there's some growing pains in there for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say Chandler Morris, though, 2 interceptions in the red zone, one of those on a superhuman play by Travis Hunter. So maybe call it 1.5 to be fair to him.
1.5. He still made the decision to throw at Travis Hunter, who had already shown that he was superhuman. So, maybe it was the decision making, if not necessarily the playmaking.
So aside from what we talked about with the quarterback play and Chandler Morris, what else did the Colorado game tell you about this year's TCU team?
Yeah, we just really underestimated what it was going to take to replace the talent, not just the Max Duggan, obviously, but Quentin Johnston, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson won the Thorpe Award last season as college football's best defensive back and is now in the NFL. D. Winters at linebacker. Those guys, Steve Avila on the offensive line, guys that spent a lot of time at TCU and reached that peak of performance last season. And although there is talent on this roster, it isn't just turnkey. You're not able to just replace guys like that at that level to just step in and say, all right, yeah, without losing a beat. And I think also we underestimated what Colorado was going to do. I mean, that team certainly was more talented than TCU fans, probably everyone across national media expected them to do. They came out and performed at an incredible level. So, but as far as for TCU, just replacing that level of talent, it's a huge challenge. And, I think maybe if TCU had rolled up into the season a little slower, if that Colorado game had been game 2 or 3, maybe things are a little cleaner. You've got a new offense again this season. So there were hurdles to get through in that first game. And when you had a team that talented on the other side of the field, it was going to present a challenge.
And you mentioned those really critical defensive players who've now moved on. TCU has always been known for their defense historically for all the years under Gary Patterson. What a great defensive mind he was. Obviously, don't have to tell you that one. How confident are you that Sonny Dykes can continue any kind of tradition of defensive excellence in this program?
Well, I think it's it's been a huge challenge, and it's been something that the fan base has really pushed back against. This Joe Gillespie defense now running the 3-3-5 after so many years of running the Gary Patterson 4-2-5. It's a lot of, as fans just watching the game, it's hard to wrap your mind around the 3 down linemen and where is pressure coming from. You understand how it works a little bit on causing problems for defenses, but yeah, it's definitely not performed to the level that Gary Patterson's defense is at its peak were performing. So I think I'm not sure. There's been a lot of people calling for changes to the defense. I don't think there's any suggestion that Sonny Dykes is anywhere close to making a change like that. But certainly the defense needs to perform better. And the thing that it did last season that made it so successful was didn't allow big plays, kept things in front of them, made sure tackles. And that's really where losing that talent showed up in just the tackling in these first 2 games, even against Nicholls State, the FCS game last week. There's opportunities there where receivers are running wide open. So I think that some of that just has to get fixed, and some of that is bringing in the right guys. And yeah, I think there will be some challenge in recruiting to pick up where, I think recruits certainly knew coming into a Gary Patterson team that the defense was always going to be at a pretty high level, and maintaining that going forward now in the new era is it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. I think that the TCU defense has been a little bit of bend and don't break. But when there's a team that can break it, it gets broken pretty handily. Obviously, as we saw in the national championship game, as last season, as we saw in the Colorado game in week 1, it can certainly be broken.
So getting into this Saturday's game more specifically, energy and motivation are so often so important in college sports. From our perspective, Dana Holgorsen pretty much straight up admitted that his team just wasn't as amped up for the Rice game as their opponents were this past weekend. So, given that this is a game on this coming Saturday that Houston as a school has been institutionally looking forward to for about 30 years now, do you feel like TCU is up to go play Houston, and or, do you worry at all about an enthusiasm gap on Saturday?
I think they're definitely, TCU has shown, and Sonny Dykes said the same kind of message after the Colorado game about TCU's motivation and kind of who wanted it more, who wanted to go out there and just play football more in week 1. And I don't know that was fixed in week 2. Obviously an FCS opponent it's not the same. So sometimes that motivation could be forgiven there, but I think there is a little bit of that for TCU this season. Some of the Super Bowl hangover, as it were, from the national championship season. And, especially having now taken a loss. And so you're pretty well certain that level of success is not on the table for this season. So keeping that team motivated is going to be absolutely huge. I do think, though, that TCU is ready to get into the Big 12 play. I think that, and after the Houston game is the Iron Skillet game. There's been a whole lot of back and forth with the SMU fans as well. So I think there's a lot of this team is ready to have that fire again that it clearly didn't have through 2 weeks. But certainly being able to have the goal in front of this team of, let's go compete for a Big 12 title now. We lost out on the Big 12 title last year. Let's go do that. That is now the goal. And the first step in that goal is this weekend in Houston. I think they will definitely be ready to, and understanding no matter what happened with Houston last week or throughout the years past, Houston's going to be very up and motivated for this game, and you can't let anything slip by because Houston has the players to go take it from you.
And certainly in terms of that game, I think, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think if you polled all 4 of us sitting here, I think probably 4 out of 4 of us, I'm guessing, would expect TCU to win on Saturday. But let's assume for a minute that doesn't happen. Let's assume that U of H pulls off the upset at this point. Other than maybe the motivation gap, what do you expect the main kind of what went wrong takeaway would be in TCU Nation in the universe where they lose this game?
Yeah, I think it's lapses in the secondary where, if Donovan Smith is able to find those star receivers that Houston has, I think that clearly, as Colorado showed, there's ways to exploit that secondary right now, that will lead to big plays, big scoring opportunities, and you pile up enough of those in a game and enough mistakes from TCU, and you could definitely go steal a game. I don't know that TCU should be considered a prohibitive favorite in this game. I haven't seen yet if the lines come out. It's probably like a touchdown or so, maybe. But the home atmosphere, I think, will have something to play there. But that's where TCU has already this season had quite a lot of problems with penalties as well. So false start penalties, procedural penalties on offense, setting drives back early. Pass interferences and stuff on the defensive side as well, that there's just been enough mistakes that the accumulation of mistakes and just moments of greatness from an opposing offense can definitely get TCU in this game. No question. I think Houston does have an opportunity here.
All right, and then finally, we'll end it a little bit more optimistically on your part, at least. And I'll say, let's say it goes the other way. Let's say TCU covers the spread, wins by a couple scores. Give us one player we haven't talked about yet who you think is going to come out of that game as kind of maybe a star from the game.
Star from the game, I think, needs to be Amani Bailey, the running back. He had a big game against Colorado, over 150 yards rushing. But he suffered a little bit of an injury late in the game and couldn't be on the field for the last couple of drives. He will be how this offense runs, I think. Obviously, Chandler Morris, his success and decision-making will be the thing that makes it happen. But I think Amani Bailey, the offense needs to be able to run the ball against this Houston defense to really stay up in this game. On the defensive side, I think it comes down to the corners. Josh Newton is a preseason All-American on one side, and he's been pretty solid. He didn't get tested too much in the Nichols game. Travis Hunter hit him for a couple in the Colorado game, but on the other side, Avery Helm is a Florida transfer, and he struggled a little bit, and it's been a little bit of a rotation of guys. So I think if one of those cornerbacks steps up and makes some big plays and prevents the big plays coming from those Houston wide receivers, those might be the names that show up as, okay, that's the guy who made the play that saved the game or made the game for the Frogs on Saturday.
All right, Anthony. Well, we appreciate so much you coming on to let us know TCU a little bit better. So let the listeners at home know where they can find your work and everything for all their TCU preview information in advance of Saturday's game.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. We at frogsowar.com is where you can see all of our written content. You can follow that blog. It's a member of the SB Nation. At Frogs of War on Twitter, Facebook. You can catch us on all the social media there. And then the Frogs Up podcast, fellow member of the 10-12 network here. And we'll be talking later this week, dropping an episode previewing this Houston game in detail, in further depth. So excited to talk more and definitely see this game on Saturday. I think it'll be a really great one. Should be really fun atmosphere there. I've been looking forward to it myself, thinking that I think Houston. I hope Houston will still really show up and show out as a city for this game. I know the Big 12 has put a lot of emphasis on it, so I think it should be a fun time on Saturday, and just looking forward to the contest and these teams going forward in the Big 12 schedule.
So thanks again to Anthony for coming on. I think TCU is an interesting opponent, guys. Obviously, this is a team that looks quite different than the one that played for the national title about 8 months ago, but it's not just a team that's replacing key guys. A lot of them, Anthony mentioned Max Duggan, Quinn Johnston, Travius Hodges, Tomlinson, Kendre Miller, just to name some of them. This team also lost their offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, who left to take the same position at Clemson, had run Sonny Dykes' offenses for the previous 3 seasons at TCU and SMU, and get replaced by a name that is unfortunately quite familiar to us in this podcast, and Kendall Briles. Their defense did return star guys like Johnny Hodges and Bud Clark from the 2022 defense, but in their last 2 games against FBS competition, they've allowed over 100 combined points. So I think some of that can be explained by the fact that you were playing Georgia, who is the consensus best team in the country a year ago, and Colorado, who looks like a very good offensive team. And I think very importantly, you did not have any film on what they were going to look like. So you can explain some of that away. I really do think there are a surprising amount of at least superficial similarities to how these two fan bases feel with their 1-1 start to the season. I don't know if that's something I expected when I looked ahead at this game before the season start. What do you guys think about the Horned Frogs?
Yeah, they're an intriguing team, and I think I'm just real curious to see what the line play looks like in this one. Houston kind of struggling in the trenches the first 2 weeks against UTSA and TCU, and all of a sudden you're going up against a TCU team that, they're replacing some guys on defense for sure. And, like I said, it's, Sonny Dykes has yet to prove that he's anything close to the defensive coach that the Gary Patterson was for sure. And they're only doing the 3-down lineman, kind of like we heard just a minute ago. But yeah, I don't know. Just with Houston looking so unconvincing in the trenches, I worry that this is going to be a game where Houston, can't run the ball, not holding a pocket for Donovan Smith, and TCU is just running the ball to much success, whether or not Chandler Morris is playing all that well. We saw that the way that, that they lost the shootout to Colorado in the opener, but they put up a lot of points against Colorado in that opener too. And again, is that okay? It's Colorado. Don't know how good they are defensively, but they're probably at least as good defensively as the UTSA and Rice defenses that have been giving U of H all kinds of struggles through 2 weeks. So yeah, I don't know. It is kind of a situation where I'm a little worried how the line play is going to look. I'm a little worried that TCU is just going to be able to score more points against a U of H defense that looked pretty feckless in the first half against Rice. That all of a sudden that this game just might be 2 or 3 scores before we know it. I just don't know that U of H has the offensive firepower to get back in a game like that.
Yeah, I think, with TCU being one of my 3 teams this year, I've kind of been watching them a little closer than I have many other teams. But we know how they did week 1, right? That loss. But like we said, there was no film on it. You didn't really know what that Colorado team was going to look like. So, you can kind of brush that one off and go, yeah, all the hype surrounding Dion, all that kind of stuff. But Chandler Morris, I think, looks like a decent Big 12 quarterback. I don't think he looks great. I don't think he looks bad. One of the things he is doing is throwing 2. He's got 4 interceptions so far this year, 2 in each game. And there is one thing U of H has done a good job of this year. It is creating turnovers, and I think that's going to be something that we could capitalize on if we are going to make this a game like he said, little mistakes, right? Penalties, that kind of stuff. But a couple of turnovers, next thing you know, you got a short field. You flip the script, and you take a drive where they're going to put up 7, and you turn that into you putting up 7. You have that 14-point flip. So really, that's something to look out for. We have done a great job of creating those turnovers, and TCU has shown that they'll turn the ball over a couple of times. The thing that is concerning, though, Dustin, you pointed this out. TCU's gotten to the quarterback in that Colorado game. They had 4 sacks. And our offensive line has looked good, but it's also looked really bad. So it's going to be interesting to see how our offensive line stands up to their defensive line. I know they're only doing the 3-down lineman thing, but they are still getting to the quarterback. So, we've said that's going to be a strength of this U of H team going into the season is the offensive line play. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it does against a team that seems to really be getting to the quarterback in TCU.
Real quick aside, fun U of H offensive line stats. So right now, Patrick Paul is the 3rd highest graded left tackle, period, not left or right tackle in college football. That's pretty good. He had the best graded left tackle performance of anyone in the country in week 2. The problem is U of H's right tackle, who I'm not going to name this young man because it's not a flattering stat, is graded the 413th best tackle per Pro Football Focus, which, not saying that's the gospel, not saying that they know it better than anyone out there who's grading offensive linemen, but it's probably not without merit that the other regular tackle is 413. Just thought that was a funny.
There's some fire to that smoke for sure.
There's some fire to that smoke.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I would just say this TCU offense, it should be a very tough rushing attack. And I know Anthony mentioned it, Imani Bailey was out late against Colorado, but if their offensive coordinator didn't have a terminal case of getting way too cute with his play calls, I think the Horned Frogs could have rushed for even more than the 262 yards they managed against Colorado and maybe even won that football game. as a result. And I know the Cougars had a solid week defending the run against Rice, but if Amani Bailey is fully healthy and the TCU run game is clicking, that's going to be an entirely different set of challenges than your first two opponents threw at you. And that receiver group is intriguing to me. A trio of transfers: John Paul Richardson, who started his career at Oak State; Warren Thompson, who started his career at Arkansas; and Jared Wiley, who's a holdover from last year's team, but did start his career at UT Austin. We'll be curious to see if they can get Bama transfer JoJo Earl involved a bit more in this coming week as well. An experienced offensive line as well. And I don't want to give away something I'm going to get to in a second, but really notice that they had three high-performing veteran guys at their three interior positions. I think acknowledging my opinions about Kendall Briles, the offensive coordinator, and certainly my opinions on Kendall Briles, the person, the Frogs are still going to be explosive, tough to defend offense. And I think watching last week's Rice performance makes it hard for me to feel very optimistic we're going to see a lot of Cougar stops on Saturday night. Will Sahay might be a bit easier slugging the defensive side of the ball. Joe Gillespie, their defensive coordinator, actually a familiar guy. I don't know if you guys remember this, was Tulsa's defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021. So Cougars have seen a little bit of his specific 3-3-5 stack. And I mean, yes, they've regressed a fair amount from last season. It's been rough from the game against UGA to about present time. Didn't have the greatest performance against Michigan, but again, I don't think you're going to pick nits if you're TCU and you're beating Michigan in the college football playoff semifinal. They did bring back key guys, like I mentioned earlier, Bud Clark and Johnny Hodges, and there's some level of experience at every part of this defense. But I think the problem is at every one of those levels, you're also replacing key guys who just played a big part in last year's TCU team being what they were. I think the big picture concern is always going to be how long does the Gary Patterson defensive culture stay in the building there in Fort Worth? Because as accomplished a head coach as Sonny Dykes is, most of his teams have really struggled defensively over the years. And that's at several different stops. Is now in, I think, multiple kind of eras of college football. It's been pretty consistent. His teams do not defend well. Guys, before we get to matchup to watch, do you have anything else to say about the Horned Frogs?
Nope.
So I think I mentioned earlier, TCU has a really experienced interior offensive line, three guys at guard and center who are grading at least in the top 60 of all individuals at their respective offensive line positions. Center John Lands is actually in the top 10 nationally among qualified players for how he's graded out at center the first 2 weeks. And this is translated, I think, in a small sample size to TCU running the ball quite well when it's chosen to do so in these first 2 weeks. On the other side, U of H still appears to be missing Chidozie Owonkwo, Jamari Caldwell, regular as well. And while it looks like Anthony Holmes has graded out real well these first couple weeks, I think he's done as well as you could expect a redshirt freshman interior lineman to do. I think in an ideal world, you'd be facing this opponent with your full complement of interior defensive linemen against this level of experienced opponent. If the Horned Frogs can consistently establish a run between the tackles, guys, no matter how often Baby Briles gets way too cute, if they can keep going back to that run and get at least 4 or 6 yards every time they run the ball, it's going to be a long night on Saturday.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dustin. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, that's kind of like I mentioned with the lines up front. It's just it's like I said, I feel like the best thing you can hope for, kind of like you said, is that Kendall Briles gets a little bit too cute with it, because it's just, especially if Chidozie Owonkwo is not back, it's hard to imagine U of H having too much success stopping the TCU run.
Yep. And I said my matchup earlier when I was breaking down TCU is it's going to be that the UHO line versus the defensive front of TCU. As much as we always like to do something cute here, I think that's just really where it's gonna boil down to. They're getting to the quarterback, and we haven't done the best job protecting the quarterback. So with Donovan Smith, he had a couple of plays where he got some happy feet last week, and he kind of, that first interception kind of threw one up and it got intercepted. And I think the big edge for us is going to be in turnovers. We've done a pretty good job of protecting the ball this year and turning over the other team. And I think that's going to be the key to victory. And if Donovan Smith is under a lot of pressure and he turns the ball over a couple of times, has to scramble, roll out, gets hit, fumbles the ball, or throws one up and it gets intercepted, I think that's where we're going to see some problems.
Yeah, it kind of is similar a little bit to my matchup to watch, which was just Donovan Smith versus this TCU defense. We've talked about how TCU, even last year, going to the college football playoff and winning a game, they were an offense-centric team. They were a good defensive team, but they weren't a great defensive team, kind of like we're used to under Gary Patterson and have lost some studs from that team, and very much TBD what that's going to look like over the course of a full season defensively, I think. And then on the other hand, kind of like we talked about, Donovan Smith has been, not terrible, but certainly shaky the first 2 weeks. He's, I think, been even a little bit better runner than I expected, but he's also just, you saw on tape before we came here, some of the decision making being a little bit questionable. We've seen some of that, some of the, even when he's making the right decision, not always making the throw every time. We've seen some of that. Just haven't necessarily seen a ton of the development and improvement that you hope to see over an offseason for a guy that's been in college for a few years now. But on the same hand, you could say, maybe he's still getting his feet under him in a new program, and like I said, maybe there's still improvement to be had there. And we're facing that TCU defense that you heard Anthony talk about, where he just said, hey, this is a defense that's been known to blow some plays, has been known to get up some big plays. Donovan Smith looks kind of shaky, but he's got some wide receivers that we know can really break some big plays. We know Sammy Brown's a talented wide receiver. We know Matthew Golden's a talented wide receiver. We know Manjack is a talented wide receiver. So certainly Donovan Smith has some options and some weapons available to him against a TCU defense that has looked somewhat leaky, or at least certainly did against Colorado in the opener. And I mean, ultimately, Houston brought in Donovan Smith to win Big 12 games because he's won Big 12 games. Here's a Big 12 game, Donovan. So, what, it's time, you've had 2 games to kind of get your feet under you, but this is the Big 12 now. This is where you have thrived at times. So hopefully we see the some of the Donovan Smith versus UT last year kind of Donovan Smith, and a little bit less of the still getting used to things, still making some not great decisions Donovan Smith that we've seen the first couple of weeks of the season.
I'm just hoping that this team keeps it competitive. I don't think we've seen this team quit very often, so I don't expect the guys not to fight out there, but not just because I'm going to actually make the trip out there to see it, but would just like to not remember this game for years and years later as, oh, hey, remember when our first game against TCU was getting just absolutely smacked around by them? And I'm not saying that's the most likely outcome. I'm not saying that's what I'm predicting to happen here, but it's possible. This first 2 weeks have shown us that is absolutely possible. And I just hope we see a good crowd out there for, not going to see as good of a crowd as if we had beaten Rice, but hope to see good amount of Cougar red in the stadium and the kind of atmosphere that this first game, regardless of what you think about this head coach, regardless of what you think about the direction of this program, but this first game that we've been waiting for, this program's been waiting for many, many years. I hope there's a lot of butts and seats there at the stadium to see it happen.
Yeah, so it's first Big 12 game, first Big 12 football game, and it's going to be your first experience with Big 12 fan bases, which is going to be a lot larger than the fan bases that U of H is traditionally, even if they draw middling crowds, had a very easy time drowning out pretty much every opposing fan base. There's just not really an AAC fan base that pulls all that. I don't know if there, maybe you can tell me, is there a single AAC team that we left behind that could touch any of the Big 12 teams that we're joining in terms of like how many fans we'd expect them to bring to Houston for a game?
We're not including the CUSA teams that moved up.
Yeah, not including Cincinnati and UCF, obviously, because there's
no, and also not including like UTSA who came in after us, right?
Yes.
I don't think so.
No.
There's one.
Yeah. You can't bring a we're sad that we lost to UTSA like C+ crowd and expect it to not be kind of like, embarrassing. I don't know that it'll be TCU will have more fans, but just too close for comfort to where it doesn't feel like a home game anymore. So, we bitched and moaned for quite a while about the Rice game. I'm sure many of you bitched and moaned about the Rice game, but it is definitely time to put that in the rear view and, show up and make it a honest to goodness home crowd atmosphere for Houston's first ever Big 12 football game.
I agree.
All right. Well, I think on that note, you guys want to talk about some other Big 12 football going on this weekend?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. I'll keep it going here. Iowa State starts off. It'll be at Ohio. The Cyclones are a 3-point favorite in that one. The Bobcats have already played 3 games as they lost to San Diego State in week 0, followed it up with a FCS win and then a 17-10 win this past Saturday at the Florida Atlantic Fighting Tom Hermans.
Suck it, Tom.
This game scares me as an Iowa State fan just because, one, Ohio won 10 games last year. 2, they have thus far played 3 low-scoring, close games, and this is just an Iowa State offense that is going to likely struggle to score points, which means we're likely going to see this one be a real low-scoring game when Iowa State's going to need to come up with a key player to get a road win against the MAC team that is not going to care about what is going on with Iowa State. Is just going to see this as a juicy potential Big 12 scalp. So my Cyclones 3-point favorite, but this is certainly the archetypal any win is a good win if they can get out of Athens with a dub game for the Cyclones.
I don't think you do, Dustin, but it wouldn't shock me if you did. Do you know what the over-under on this one is?
I do not offhand.
This stunned me. 45. I cannot believe and again, like the bookmakers know better than me, would think these two teams would produce 45 points. I just caught that while I was looking at the Big 12 weekly schedule and putting my thoughts. I was like, did I read that right? Was the total 45 on that? Crazy stuff. Yeah,
that seems a little bit high. Again, that this one likely feels like it'll be in the teens. Might have one or both teams in the single digits. Even we'll see how that goes.
It's like a very spiritually 23-20 kind of final.
Right. Keeping it in the MAC, Cincinnati will be hosting Miami of Ohio. It's the battle for the victory bell. Big rivalry game there. The Bearcats come into this one as 14-point favorites. Cincinnati has won 16 straight games in this series. To take a 1-game lead all time in the rivalry, 60-59 with 7 draws. Fun fact, Miami of Ohio, the absolute model of mediocrity recently in that other than the COVID year where they only played 3 games, they have gone 6 straight years in which they won at least 5 games and lost at least 5 games, which is kind of hard to do almost, to never have an actual good or bad year for 6 straight seasons. I'm a little baffled that the line for this one is as low as 14. The Redhawks got crushed by New Miami in their season opener before beating UMass last week, which, okay, whatever. And, I guess maybe Vegas is thinking that, crazy things happen in rivalry games, but kind of like I said, 16 straight games. It doesn't seem to be happening in this rivalry. The last 4 games in this series have been decided by 3+ scores in Cincinnati's favor. But I mean, maybe Vegas is thinking, trap game potential here. This game is sandwiched in between the big road win against Pitt and Cincinnati's opener against the Sooners of Oklahoma. So I can see that one a little bit more, but we'll see. I expect Cincinnati, as good as they've looked, will be able to take care of business against Miami of Ohio. And then we've got Oklahoma State hosting South Alabama. They're a touchdown favorite in this one. The Jaguars, maybe not as good as those 10 wins last year might tell you. They looked second best by a wide margin against Tulane in the opener and took a while to put away their FCS opponent, Southeastern Louisiana, last week. The Cowboys, after this one, get Iowa State next week, which seems like very likely we could see this Oklahoma State team at kind of like a fool's gold 4-0, where they're receiving votes in the top 25 or something, but or maybe just ripe to get exposed by someone else down the line. But we'll see how long this Oklahoma State barely keeping it together thing rolls on. Thus far, Mike Gundy has got them 2-0. So, and likely I think that'll probably continue, although I'm jinxing the hell out of them right now. So we'll see how that one goes. And then finally, in the evening slate, we've got Kansas at Nevada. This one is not likely to be close. Kansas a 4-touchdown favorite in this one. That is because the Wolfpack, first they got demolished 66-14 in the opener at USC, which is maybe a little bit forgivable, but what is definitely not forgivable was that Nevada got stomped at home last week, 33-6 by FCS opponent Idaho, losing by 27 to an FCS team. Not great. Ironically, prior to Idaho winning this game, Nevada had beaten them 7 straight times in 7 straight years when they were conference mates. And then Idaho drops down to FCS and comes back and beats them in the first game as an FCS team. Go figure. So, man, if you're Nevada, nobody in America might be on a hotter seat than Ken Wilson, who took over a Nevada team that had gone the last 4 seasons before he took over 8-5, 7-2, 7-6, 8-5. He went 2-10 in year 1 and has now gotten outscored 99-20 in 2 games of this year. And oh yeah, he's about to face a Kansas team that looks really good and is about to pile on just a world of hurt onto his already large pile of hurt. So those are my 4 games. I expect we'll see at least 3 Big 12 wins out of those 4, and keeping my fingers crossed for the Cyclones coming away with making it 4 out of 4.
That's such a random roadie to like Reno. Like KU played a return game like in Reno. It's not, don't think it's going to be a challenging return game for them, but they're just like, yeah, we'll give you a game in Reno, I guess.
You mean like Houston going to UNLV?
That's different. That's different. One of these places is located in like a major, whatever you think about Vegas, a major tourist hub, and one of them is located in a down market Vegas that's only appeal as being like a couple hours from Lake Tahoe. Like that's and maybe I'm
They
letting,
did have a TV show about their police force, though.
they did a funnier TV show than I think anything Vegas adjacent has produced. But I think that's where the superlatives end for the city of Reno. We'll jump into my games real quick, if you guys don't mind. Starting with the K-State Wildcats. I think one of the bigger games we're going to talk about from the entire Big 12 slate, spicy former Big 8 and Big 12 North Division rivalry. The Cats will go east to Como to take on the Mizzou Tigers. It's kind of hard to compare these teams' resumes or say what they are at this point. They've each played one FCS and one Group of 5 opponent. I guess K-State played the better Group of 5 team of the two and handled Troy a lot more convincingly than Mizzou handled Middle Tennessee State. The Tigers actually won 23-19 over Middle Tennessee, which just feels like about the most empty non-conference victory you could possibly draw up. But when these teams met last year, K-State demolished Mizzou in Manhattan. I think it'll be closer just by virtue of the game being in Columbia and representing K-State's first game away from Manhattan in 2023. But I don't know. I think this K-State defense, if they are what they're supposed to be, should shut down a Mizzou offense that didn't look super convincing against two much more inferior opponents prior. So I think one of the better games, maybe the best game, honestly, in that 11 a.m. Central early time slot. Any thoughts about the Cats and the Cats, fellas?
No.
Not much to say about Tech's game next. Playing Tarleton State, other than just what I said earlier, they've earned a stress-free guaranteed win against an FCS opponent, given how much they challenged themselves to start the season. And my next one, BYU, they have a really interesting one. They're going to Arkansas, I think one of the more interesting matchups of the week, which I know this is not the greatest college football slate, so it's not a high bar to clear, but an interesting one. BYU didn't look very good offensively a couple weeks ago against their one FBS opponent so far, Sam Houston. Razorbacks have played just an unbelievably cupcakey schedule to start the season. Western Carolina and then Kent State, who they looked dramatically less convincing against than UCF did in week one. I guess the primary concern is just going to be, can BYU move the ball on the road against even a middle of the pack SEC defense? Because they couldn't at home against Sam Houston. All respect to the Bearcats with a K, but maybe who knows? The Cougars maybe have shown a fairly vanilla playbook so far. Arkansas, I don't know, may not be ready for something, but not exactly what I'm expecting. But I do think that KJ Jefferson and Arkansas offense versus BYU defense matchup, I think will be a fun one, a good strength on strength one right there on the same time as the Cougs. So I probably won't watch it live, but decent upset spot for a Big 12 team. And I think the last game, probably the biggest Big 12 game that we're going to talk about, the backyard brawl, West Virginia hosting Pitt on Saturday evening. I think a chance to get some revenge for what was a heartbreaking week one loss last season in Pittsburgh for the Mountaineers. And I think as much as anyone could be cautiously optimistic about anything West Virginia football right now, I don't know. I feel decent about their chances here in this one. I think since he showed last week against Pitt that the Panthers' run defense is far from invincible, the Bearcats had over 200 yards on the ground versus Pitt. The West Virginia offense, if nothing else, has shown an ability to pound the rock with CJ Donaldson and Garrett Green. I think the question in this one is, who wins the matchup of the not strength on strength? The Pitt offense, which completed less than 1/3 of its passes against Cincy, or the West Virginia defense, which I think is still a big question mark 2 games in to the season. Really love a rivalry game, and I hope we get a similar level of entertainment value than we did last year when it was a very, I think, good week one matchup from the Mountaineers and Panthers last year. Guys, any more thoughts on any of the games I talked about?
Nope.
Do West Virginia and Pitt fans like each other, or how was that? Is that a sibling rivalry like I Want Us to Be with Rice, or is that more of a fuck you rivalry? Can you give me an insight in that one?
That is a emphatically more of a fuck you rivalry, Dustin. I'm going to treat your question with the seriousness that I'm sure you asked it with.
All right, so my 3 teams, TCU, I don't know if you guys know this, but they play the University of Houston this week. Should be an interesting game. The line opened up a lot. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go into any more of that. So that's TCU. Baylor, they play Long Island. Exactly.
The Sharks.
And
a shark fin. If you can't watch, I'm doing a shark fin on top of my hat.
Thanks, bud. And the Central Florida Golden Knights, they play Villanova.
You really got the murderer's row of games this week, Bobby.
Yeah. So if it was basketball, super hype, but it's not. It is football. So there's my three teams. We have TCU versus U of H, Baylor versus Long Island, and the University of Central Florida Golden Knights
versus
take
FCS Northeast.
Man, that's two NCAA football references in one
Incredible.
in one pod. Good job, team. Good job, team. All right, that's all I got for those games. Unless you guys really need me to look up stats for Long Island or something like that, because I'll tell you guys,
we most certainly do not.
I did not.
I did have one other game, one non-Big 12 game for this week, and it was and so I looked at the entire non-Big 12 slate, and I realized there just wasn't a single game that I cared about at all. So I made my one other game Thursday night, Navy at Memphis. Why is this my game? Because I saw it on the schedule and just cackled deliriously that I don't have to give one iota of shit about this game. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that is my game of the week, even though I will not be paying any attention to it whatsoever.
Yeah, mine's Colorado State. Only it's an in-state rivalry. It probably won't be an interesting game, but there's probably a little bit of juice to it. So, it might be worth turning.
Mexico State too, if you want to see some in-state.
Yeah. I just like I like rivalry games. So
fair enough.
I was gonna say, Fresno. I will not vigorously disagree with anyone who says this is not a great college football slate, because outside the Big 12, it really is not. But Fresno State at Arizona State in the late nighttime slot, interesting one. I think very correctly, the Bulldogs are a 3-point favorite, at least as of doing my notes. So hopefully a game to have on in the background after a resounding and spirit-lifting Cougar win.
I say quite often the schedules, the week schedules that look the least interesting are the ones that end up having the most crazy upsets. So
very true.
Maybe we'll get a fun week and we'll have a bunch of interesting games to talk about after all. All right. I think we're ready to move on from college football, guys. Let's talk about Cougar golf, which men's and women's golf both opened their fall slates this past week. And the women's team certainly did so in high style. They began the season with a bang, played the first of their fall tournaments on Monday and Tuesday of this week at the Sam Golden Invitational in Corinth, Texas. And the Cougs were, just dominant. They finished 48 strokes under par. That was good for 13 strokes ahead of second place North Texas, not to mention 31 strokes ahead of Texas Tech, 39 strokes ahead of TCU, a clean 50 strokes ahead of the other Cougars in the Big 12 of BYU. And not only did you see some of the returners do great, but you saw freshman Ellen Yates in her first ever collegiate match win the individual title at 14 under par. So I don't know, guys. I'm having a hard time imagining a script you could possibly write. It's only the first game of the fall season. There's a lot of golf to go. The end of the season is months and months away still, but you couldn't really script much of a better first data point than this one.
Haha. Hey guys, I hit the silent on my microphone. I'm killing it on that one, guys. So anyways, I actually went out to the tournament yesterday. I went out last year to a tournament and had an awesome time. Decided to go up to this one. Actually only stayed out for I think I saw about 5 golf shots before I got sick on the way home from the tournament. I was gonna walk to the back nine where I saw the Cougars were, and I got to the clubhouse and I just went, yeah, I'm not making it anymore. So I saw about 4 golf shots, but we said Ellen Yates won the tournament, and I remember when she won the British Amateur. I remember texting Sam, because Sam had texted me about our incoming freshman who won the state championship here in Texas, and he said, "Hey,
who was also in this 5."
Yep, and he said, "Hey, you know a little bit more about golf than I do." He goes, "Is this something like that's a big deal?" And I said, "Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. Anytime you can get a state champion in Texas in pretty much any sport to sign for your program, that's pretty sweet." But then I saw this and I texted Sam and I said, the fact that we have she's never played and she's going to the AM and she won the British Amateur, that's a pretty good sign. And I think her performance here shows that. So something really exciting to see the team come out and just dominate like this. One senior on this team, which is also really exciting. And it's not just, when you hear one senior, you think it's going to be a really young, inexperienced team that may not know what they're doing and they may not come out and play well, but it's an experienced team. And to despite being young, it's going up for this Cougar women's golf team. It's really exciting to go out. And I highly recommend that if you are a Cougar fan and you look up their schedule, the tournaments are free to go to. At least the two I've been to, you just show up to the course and you just kind of walk out there. There's no gates, there's no anything like that. And you can just walk around the course and they just let you enjoy it. And they typically play at really nice courses. So if you're a golfer, it's fun to go check out just for that, but also go support the Cougars. When I went to the tournament last year, they were super appreciative that I was out there. I actually got a handwritten note from Coach Gunn, about everything and thanking me for coming out and all that kind of stuff. And at the volleyball game, she came up and said hey to me. It's a really cool thing. As I told her, if Cougar volleyball was in North Texas, was playing the University of North Texas, I'd go to that game, right? If the basketball team was playing up there, if women's basketball was playing at SMU or something, I'd go to that. If they're in your area, go check them out. It's really fun. And you can support a team that doesn't get a lot of support in terms of fan interaction at their events. Sorry, that's my little, I'll step off the soapbox now.
No, it's very, very good. I think there was just so many different layers of things to get excited about. Ellen Yates announcing her college career by winning an event. Can't do a whole lot better than that. I know golf is fickle. I know you can win an event and then the next week just really struggle to even get close to par. But I thought it was a really fantastic performance. Most Vidin skilled, dropped off a bit at the very end, but was very, very much around the leaderboard. I think during this event, Nicole Abelar as well. It's an exciting one because she was someone we were intrigued by when she came in from Coastal Carolina and just hasn't really consistently done it yet. It would make this team almost unstoppable if Nicole Abelar is playing at the level of Most Vidinskield or Ellen Yates or Natalie St. Germain whenever she plays an event again. That if you have 3 or 4, I would say borderline event winning level golfers, I think this could be a really, really, really good team. And yeah, couldn't be a more exciting start to the season than what the Cougars did against a very good field up there in Corinth.
Yeah, so you mentioned Natalie St. Germain. Cougars dominated, and Natalie St. Germain, who was your second lowest scorer last year as a freshman, didn't even compete in this one. So Cougs NCAA tournament team last year, only lose one of your tournament 5, and then bring in a couple of just really exciting looking freshmen. So I think even figuring out who your tournament 5 is going to be the best kind of problem for Coach Lydia Gum to have this year. And then the men's team opened their fall season as well, competing at the Argent Financial Classic, where Houston took 4th out of 16 teams. Definitely a less exciting performance than what we saw from the women. Finished behind UAB, Louisiana Lafayette, Southern Miss, ahead of a bunch of other smaller conference schools. No surprise, Santiago de la Fuente leading the way, shooting 11 under to tie for second place on the individual leaderboard, with no other Coug finishing better than 16th. So, kind of like, you don't want to crown the women, national champs yet based on one event. You don't want to jump off of the bandwagon for the men just yet. But, kind of if your expectation going in was, this might be a decent but not great team and, just not enough depth behind Santiago de la Fuente, that's kind of what your first data point suggested is the case as well.
Yeah. 4th out of 16th, that's not bad. It's not something that you're
2 points off, 2 strokes off the lead too.
Yeah. 2 strokes off the lead. And the leaders were tied for first. So your 4th place is your 2 strokes off the lead. Everyone else that kind of beat you, they all kind of tied. So it really feels like you're there. You're right there on it. It's just a matter of here and there. You hit a chip that gets a little closer. You make the putt. It's a missed putt here. It's a made putt there that they kind of did a little bit better than you. I wouldn't be too disappointed with 2 shots off the lead, but with the women's golf team to kind of tie them together, you win by 13. That's a huge win. You lose by 2. That's a couple of bad shots. That's one guy, not getting up and down. So I wouldn't be as concerned with this. Maybe the results say.
Yeah, I think the only question is just the one you have generally. Is someone other than Santiago de la Fuente capable of golfing at a high level if Santiago de la Fuente just has an off round like even the highest level golfers do?
All right, and sticking with some in-season teams, Cougar Volleyball had a 1-1 week this past week. They started the week opening with a loss to a ranked Kentucky team, 3-1, before rallying to defeat SMU also by a 3-1 score. Tough loss to Kentucky. Houston dropped a tight First set rallied from an early deficit, couldn't ever quite get all the way back, lost one by a couple points, won the second set fairly comfortably to tie it up, lost the third set fairly decisively to fall back behind 2-1, and then another real close fourth set that went Kentucky's way to give the Wildcats the victory and give Houston their second consecutive loss. And after the first loss of the season to Texas State was one in which the offense never really got going, this one was where the Cougs actually hit quite well. They hit 260 as a team, but just couldn't do enough defensively to stop Kentucky, who hit even better at 279. So tough loss despite some strong performances. Kind of sour, 17 kills, hit 429. Abby Jackson with a double-double. Kellen Moore and continued her strong start to the season with another 5-block effort. So, I think not the end of the world, certainly. And this is what we talked about. When we talked to Coach David Rare, he said, hey, we put together a heck of a non-conference schedule, and we know what the Big 12 schedule is going to be tough too. So, 30-4 was fun last year, but, we knew this wasn't going to be the same thing with the schedule we had this year. And I think that's indicated by the fact that Houston took a couple of consecutive losses and still finds himself in the top 25 this week.
Yeah, you don't get that false confidence, kind of like David Rare talked about with us. You're gonna learn something about yourself, and it's not, we're not to Big 12 play yet, so even that loss to Kentucky, you're still seeing how you stack up against one of the best 25 teams out there. You're still learning something about yourself, even if it's unfortunate to see the team lose. I think still some positives to take away from there, and I think it'll be better for that than playing somebody that's an easy 3-0 win. You're actually going to challenge yourself. You're actually going to see what this group that I think has serious designs of being to the top of a good volleyball league is made out of.
Yeah, I still think, where you start losing 3-1 to teams that are kind of in your area, you'd like to see those maybe go 5, and maybe be just a tiny bit closer. But overall, like we said, it's that murder's row of a non-conference schedule. So you do hope that the Cougs kind of figured out against these, the back half of the top 25, the 17-25. You really want to, those are the teams, again, like I said last week, that you kind of think you may be seated near, right? If based on how the season's going, you think you may be in that top 15 or the bottom 15-25 of the top 25. Those are the games that you want to win for seeding purposes, things like that. That would be my only concern with volleyball at this point.
Yeah, and so tough to lose it in 4 sets, tough to lose it at all. But I think we did see that. Like I said, each team kind of won one set decisively, and you just weren't able to quite pull out either of the 2 close ones. So this one felt like it was pretty close to maybe being a 5-setter, or even the Cougs being able to get it. I think that's indicative also by the hit percentages being very close to each other. And then, like we said, we did see the Cougs put an end to their 2-match losing streak with a 3-1 win over what has looked like a very pesky SMU team thus far this year. This one pretty close throughout. Houston and SMU split the first 2 sets. UH took the first, SMU took the second. Both of them actually went beyond the usual 25 points before somebody was finally able to get a 2-point edge to take the set. That's how close this one was. And then after going into intermission 1-1, the Cougs looked a little bit more in control in the third and fourth sets, winning those 25-21 and 25-22 to win the match. So, we talked about Kentucky being an offensive, neither team was able to really stop each other. This one was kind of the opposite, more of a defensive struggle. Neither team was able to hit even 200 in this one. Both teams posted a ridiculous 98 digs in a 4-set match. That was actually the highest number of digs in a 4-set match in U of H school history. No surprise, Kate Georgiadis leading the way with 27 digs, but she was just one of 5 Cougs with double-digit digs. The other 4 all recorded double-doubles. Annie Cook and Morgan Yonda with assists as their second category. Abby Jackson and Kenneth Sauer with kills as their second category. So, certainly the Texas State loss disappointing. The Kentucky loss could have gone either way, but this is one where you really, with some tough matches coming up, you wanted to get that win against what's been a pretty pesky team to end the skid. Wasn't going to be an easy one. So definitely proud of the Cougs for bouncing back and fighting through this one, not letting, more than one of the close sets get away and getting a win that, they kind of needed to pick themselves back up.
I think the only thing I would add is that I think you saw this team's veteran toughness in this one, that you'd lost a couple of matches coming in, and you saw him bounce back really well. Wasn't the cleanest game. I think 46 attack errors between the 2 teams. I think tells you this was not the cleanest offensive volleyball game, but to win an ugly match against an opponent that I'm sure SMU wanted to get this one, having just recently seen this Cougar team kind of be the gold standard of AAC volleyball previously and seeing them a bunch in conference. I think you were facing an opponent where I think probably the motivation gap on paper. It's a bit more to SMU. SMU is probably a bit more motivated for that one. I thought the Cougars responded really well to a couple of tough losses.
Excuse me. Yeah, if you can beat SMU, a team that we, even as recently, not last year, but the year before, struggled to even get a W against, and you come out and you just beat them the way you did, pretty happy about that.
So this coming week, the Cougs will close out their non-conference slate. As I mentioned, they stayed in the top 25, actually only dropped one spot from number 21 to 22. This week, they'll be in College Station for their final 2 non-conference matches. First, they'll have a road match against Texas A&M on Wednesday, a Texas A&M team that is receiving votes in the top 25, and then they'll have a neutral site match up in College Station against the Liberty Flames. The A&M match obviously going to be a huge one. That's on Wednesday at 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus. The Aggies are 7-1, but haven't played really too much of anybody. They lost their most recent match, which was against the TCU team that is not one of the 7 Big 12 teams that are either ranked or receiving votes. So maybe kind of a bottom half Big 12 team that they just lost to. A&M currently the 8th team out of the top 25 in the others receiving votes category. And then Liberty, 7-2, lacks any quality wins, also heads to College Station, actually off of a couple of losses, having lost their last 2 matches back-to-back to UCLA and Pepperdine. So really kind of a weird repeat of the previous week where you got your power conference team up front, although obviously, this is Kentucky was ranked, A&M is just kind of the 8th team out, so not really the same, haven't really had the same resume, I don't think, as Kentucky. And then you kind of got your pesky smaller conference team coming up right after that. So, I think it's going to be another couple of matches where, neither of these could I super confidently predict either way. I'd like to think Houston will beat Liberty. I'd like to think Houston will win both of these matchups. But going to be 2 really, really difficult teams that are gonna give Houston everything they can handle in advance of Big 12 play. So looking forward to the Cougs taking these 2 teams on.
When I saw the little RV receiving votes thing next to A&M on the Cougar Volleyball website, I was like, oh, they're a better opponent than I thought. And then I looked at their first 8 games and I was like, they got votes for this. I'm not saying A&M can't win this game in College Station. I think we saw Texas State, going on someone else's home court is a different challenge. So that is not what I'm saying here. But I was like, really, they received votes for these 7 wins and losing to a TCU team that's not even expected to be one of the good Big 12 volleyball programs. That's all.
Yeah, I did the same as you, Sam. I was like, ooh, receiving votes. Okay, this could be a pretty. And then I was like, wait a minute, this? Okay. All right.
This team that needed 5 sets to beat Wright State. Oh yeah, like they're definitely a team that's like on the cusp of being top 25. Fuck out of here.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm watching it and I'm just like, I guess these people know more about volleyball than I do. Which, if you're a volleyball voter, you do know more about volleyball than me, but okay.
If you're an AVCA voter who voted for A&M in the top 25, I'm going to find you, but that's not an actionable threat. Sorry.
I wonder why we don't have the they release the AP top 25 football poll every week and they're like, here's every voter and how they voted for everybody. And you're just like, where's this for the volleyball poll?
Not enough public pressure yet on.
That's your niche in the market, Bobby.
Consider this me starting the public pressure. Okay.
Fair enough.
Public pressure campaign is underway. So yeah,
it has started 9:35 Central Time. September 12th, it has started. Okay.
History will note that is when the public pressure that eventually brought down the AVCA began. Yeah. But no, just real quick, talking about volleyball.
Big volleyball.
The most recent AVCA top 25 poll, just littered with Big 12 teams. Number 6 UT Austin, number 12 BYU, number 18 Baylor, number 20 Kansas, number 22 Houston, number 23 Iowa State, UCF, just the 3rd team out in receiving votes right now. So de facto number 28. That gives you 7 of the top 28 teams in the country right now, according to the AVCA. So excited for this week, but yeah, I mean, it's not going to get much easier after this tough week because this is every bit the loaded, 7 to 8 bid Big 12 conference that we expected it to be. And then moving it on to Cougar soccer, the Cougars also went 1-1 on the soccer pitch this past week, beating Houston Christian 5-1 before falling to Texas State 1-0 for their first loss of the year in their non-conference finale. We'll start with a win over HCU. Houston actually jumped out to a 5-0 lead. They were leading 5-0 already, less than 5 minutes into the second half, and then pretty decisively took their foot off the gas, didn't score anymore, ended up conceding a penalty kick for HCU's 1 goal for the 5-1 final. And man, Cameron Maddox continuing her ridiculously torrid scoring pace, had the first 2 goals here for her 6th and 7th goals of the year. With conference play not even underway yet, Maddox has now scored more goals in a season than any U of H player has since Desiree Brown also scored 7 goals back in 2018. 1 more goal would put Maddox in a tie for 7th place in school history in a single season goals list. Needs 7 more to catch the school record of 14. So, Houston's been playing HCU every year for a while, has consistently beat them the last few years, but nothing like the 5-1. Could have been a lot higher than that victory that we saw on Thursday.
My favorite part of that game was somebody on the official pod account saying, in your face, HBU, I won't even dignify. I knew who did it. I knew who did it. I wasn't 100%
and I
sure.
won't. I won't. I will not call them that. They are HBU to me until they put me in the ground.
So Sam does it, and then he tags at HBU, which is just some random dude.
It was
like some random accountant who's probably just like, what the hell, man?
I don't think they tweeted in like 5 years. I think they'll be okay.
I don't think he did either, but oh my God, I was dying laughing. I was just like, and yeah, you didn't have to point to who did it. I knew. I read it and I was like, that's Sam. That is absolutely Sam right there.
Glad to see my humor comes through on the in the flat text.
I will say earlier in this very podcast, I dropped a Louisiana Lafayette because I refused to call
That's right.
Louisiana like they want to be called. So
the ULL on this podcast.
I'm on Team Petty for sure. But yeah, unfortunately, Houston, like we said, their second game of the week was a 1-0 loss to the Bobcats of Texas State. One where just we've been kind of raving about the offense and how many goals Houston has scored in non-conference play, but very much went missing in a big way at home in the regular season, or I should not say the regular season, non-conference finale against Texas State. And kind of like a reminder, like we said last week, not a terrible Texas State team, but also one that lost 3-0 to Oklahoma State. So, that's maybe kind of we're seeing the downside of, this is a team that Jaime Frias said before the season, he said, hey, my goals are make the Big 12 tournament, make the NCAA tournament. If this is going to be a team that's on the cusp of NCAA, qualifying, are all of those, gaudy non-conference wins going to count for much, or is the, committee just going to say, oh, hey, they didn't really beat anybody of substance, and they lost to Texas State. So that's the danger of scheduling the way that the Jaime Frias has.
I think I'd be more discouraged if the Cougars hadn't gotten 11 shots on target. I mean, just sometimes it's not your day. Sometimes you face a goalie just having an absolute blinder. I think not encouraged by losing to Texas State, really, but I think I'd be more discouraged. I'd be more concerned if they clearly had more chances, more possession, things like that. Just wasn't your day. And I think a reminder that this team still has some room to grow, that this team is not the finished article, even though they've beaten a number of outmatched opponents.
Yeah, I would definitely say the same there, Sam. You put enough on frame, and they go in eventually, but sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it's not your day. It happens, and I think I'd feel a whole lot different, right, if you give up 3, right, and it's 3-0, or you just seem like you just got dominated, and it didn't feel like we got dominated in that game.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we saw it. Again, not to continually compare them to last year's pretty awful team, but we saw last year's team what was like 3-0 to Lamar and shit like that. So
right,
it could always be worse. Turning forward, though, the Cougs will open Big 12 play this week in Lubbock. Cougar Soccer will do the honors of playing the University of Houston's first ever Big 12 sporting event on Thursday evening when they'll be away to Texas Tech. The Red Raiders, certainly a tough matchup, though they are receiving votes in the top 25 that I think will thus far be far and away the best team that Houston has faced this year. They're undefeated with 6 wins and 2 draws, but I think worth noting that they have been not exactly going easy on the cupcakes themselves in non-conference, played a lot of smaller teams, although they did notably their last 2 matches were a 1-1 draw at Arizona and a 1-0 win at Arizona State. So very intrigued by that one. First ever Big 12 match, and gonna be a tough one. And I'm real excited to see how this Houston team does. We've had all these like, oh yeah, I mean, okay, you forgive them for the one Texas State match. Otherwise, just because other than that, they've been very dominant in non-conference play. But yeah, this is a much tougher test. So I think, data point number one is to whether or not the non-conference scheduling philosophy was a one that built up Houston's confidence or was just giving them false confidence.
Shout out to friend of the show, Blair Quinn, who is on the Texas Tech staff coaching their defense and keepers. He'll be on the other sideline on Thursday night. That's all I got.
Former podcast guest.
Can't believe
we didn't have him on to give us the lowdown on Texas Tech soccer, but alas, it's too late for that now.
And as hokey as this may sound, it's a historic game for our athletic department.
It really is.
Yeah. We've wanted to play these games for decades. We said in the interview with TCU, we've been waiting 30 years for this. So despite how you feel about the football team or whether you think we're going to go into Lubbock and win this is a historic game for U of H athletics. So it's one to be very excited about. And I think you should try everything in your power to watch it.
And then speaking of long waits, we may have been waiting 30 years to see the Cougars play in the Big 12, but we've definitely each of us individually have been waiting 80 years for Cougar ice hockey to come back. And that is exactly
Let's go.
I would really encourage you to go. Our friend Ryan at GoCougs.com had a really great piece on the history of U of H hockey and some of the U of H hockey teams that existed. It was one of Houston's first intercollegiate sports back in like the 30s and 40s, even during our junior college days, I believe. But brought back this year as a club team. So they're competing at the D2 level, not really, not doing scholarships yet, not really, only kind of loosely affiliated with the school at this point. They kind of have, the school's blessing. They're playing with their school's uniforms and everything, but not really officially under the umbrella of the athletics department yet as a D2 club team. But they did open up their season this past weekend with a pair of games in Sugar Land. I guess kind of their home ice is in Sugar Land. They faced another D2 team in East Texas Baptist. It's a Tiger team that's actually been running their program for about 5 years now. Had their best season by far last year. They won like over 2/3 of their games. They played a bunch of teams like Oklahoma State and TCU. Texas State beat all those teams by double digits. So pretty solid D2 team. Kind of a tough opponent to give yourself for your first ever match as a team that was, just recently trying to assemble a roster on, I believe it was Reddit. I read that they were did like a Reddit post that, hey, let's do this and put it together. But I went out to that one. The guys there were kind enough to invite me down and bribe me with free food, which I was more than happy to take them up on. I got there like 30 minutes before puck drop, and I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of capacity there, but they had 3 little bleachers. They were all packed. There were already people standing up on the ice. I went up to the media VIP room. It was already packed. I had to like stand behind people to like peek through a window to even see what was going on. I watched the first period up there and ended up going down to the ice and found a little spot on the glass I could watch the second and third periods from. I mean, even facing a really tough team, and you could tell right away within the first period, there was no score in the first period, but you could kind of tell, okay, hey, there's one of these teams that's clearly been up and running for a few years. And one of these teams that, some really good skaters, some really impressive athletes on U of H, but, you could tell just as the whole cohesive unit wasn't there in a way that, you think maybe it will be in when we've been running this program for 4 or 5 years, the way that ETBU has. But, really did a really good job, impressive job to keep it 0-0 through the first period. Then the second period, we finally saw East Texas Baptist break through. They got a couple of goals. So that, was able to give them the lead. And then going into the third period, East Texas Baptist got 2 more goals early on in the third period to make it 4-0. And, I remember I was part of me was like, oh man, it was late on a Friday evening. I'd been working all week and I was like, I kind of want to leave. But I was like, but I'm not going to leave because what if I miss Houston's first hockey goal in 80 years and I could have been here to see it. So I stayed and I was not disappointed because under 5 minutes to go, the Cougs got a goal. Nico Vecchione got the very first goal. A shot from kind of a tough angle. The shot that we saw ETBU throwing up just a bunch of those shots. None of them seemed to go through. But Vecchione, really nice shot. Scored the first Houston goal. The crowd went crazy. Really great atmosphere. Just people banging on the glass, having a great time. Exactly what you want to see at a hockey game. And then a couple minutes later, in the last minute of the game, Jesse Papa, who I think had been U of H's most impressive skater and overall player throughout the game, just kind of got the puck, kind of at the top and just kind of hit a rifle that nearly tore a hole through the back of the net, made it 4-2. So certainly at that point, too late to get all the way back in the game, but really impressed by how hard Houston fought just to keep it close against a team that, like I said, was blowing a lot of teams out. Not only did they keep it close, they scored a couple goals at the end to not take the shutout. They did end up playing 2 games back-to-back, lost the second one 4-0. So similar score there, but had just a ton of fun coming out to that one. Obviously it's a little, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to cover a D2 club team going forward, but did want to at least give them a mention as they got their season underway. Had a lot of fun. Would really recommend if you get the chance to make it out to Sugar Land. They've got a number of matches coming up, so definitely want to recommend that. And just going to throw in last second here, because our super patron Sean asked me on Twitter for who my 3 stars of the game we're going to be. I'm going to give them to him. So star number 1, Jesse Papa, scored the last goal there. Like I said, just throughout the entire first, 2.5 periods, anytime it seemed like something good was happening for U of H, he seemed to be in the middle of it. Real impressed with him. And he got the goal there at the end. Second star, Nico Vecchione, got the first goal in Houston hockey history in over 80 years. You got to give him a lot of credit for that one. And then my third star is the goalie, Aaron Kruger, who I thought, like I said, just made a ton of saves in this one. I don't know if we have an official shots on goal count to see how many saves he had, but was really making a lot of impressive plays just to even keep ETBU down to 4 goals. So was impressed with him as well. And, excited to see what the Cougs do the rest of the year. Excited to see in the years going forward, what this seed ends up being planted and growing into. But yeah, like I said, just want to at least give a mention here to the Cougar hockey team and the really, like I said, impressive performance they put up. Really fun time that I had watching them this past Friday.
Awesome.
If you they'll actually this coming weekend they'll be playing Baylor up in Mansfield, which is up in the DFW area, for a couple of matches, and then the weekend after that, I see Bobby looking intrigued by that. And
speaking of planting seeds,
the weekend after that, they'll be back at home in Sugar Land against Texas State. So a couple of the teams that we saw, ETBU really kind of dominate last year. So I think maybe this will be a couple teams that hopefully Houston can be even more competitive against in these coming weeks.
And my wife's out of town, boys.
Hey,
let's go.
The stars are aligning. Come on, Bobby.
The stars, because we're talking about hockey and DFW. All right, on that incredibly funny joke that got a great response, I think is where we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week's episode. So as always, on our way out, going to encourage you to, if you haven't already done so, go to patreon.com/SHPodcast. You can sign up, make any donation from $5 on up and get access to bonus content, as well as just receiving the good karma that comes along with supporting the work that the 3 of us do to bring you entertaining Cougar content on a weekly basis. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can certainly also support us by charliehustle.com, SHP15 as a promo code. You can support us for free by following our friends, the 1012 Network, on social media, and or leaving us a 5-star review in your app of choice. I think that's enough outro for now. I think I've gotten all the things, so I'll go ahead and leave it here by saying that, as always,
go Cougs.